So we've got the speaking queue figured out. It's 4 past the hour. Let's call this meeting to order. Ms. Harlos, if you wouldn't mind, let's do roll.
Okay, 1 second here. Ms. Bilyeu?
Here.
Mr. Bowen?
Here.
Ms. Epke?
Here.
Mr. Hagan?
Here.
I'm here. Mr. Hewitt?
I'm here.
Mr. Fiera? Okay, so far no Mr. Fiera. Ms. Hogarth?
Here. He's here.
He is?
Pereira is here. He's muted.
Okay, I'll note him then. Thank you, Whitney. Ms. Hogarth? She came back in. She's in the waiting room. So I'll note her. Mr. Valente?
I'm here.
Mr. Longstreth?
Here.
Mr. Molman is here. Mr. Nana?
Here.
Mr. Hall?
Here.
Mr. Nikela?
Present.
Mr. Sexton?
Here.
Mr. Phillips?
Here.
Mr. Buffman?
Present.
Mr. Roudsep?
Here.
Ms. Sarwark?
I am here.
Mr. Smith? Mr. Smith? Okay, I'll note him absent. And Mr. Lucchini?
Here.
And I'm sorry you're out of alphabetical order. You're in Mr. Wentz spot until I redo all my forms. So, okay, Mr. Chair, so far the only one that's absent is Mr. Smith, and I'm going to be sending him a text.
Okay.
Ms. Harlos, you didn't call me, but I am here as well.
Oh, I thought I did. I have you
You did
down.
not.
Gotcha.
Point of privilege. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes,
Thank you.
no problem. All right. Well, it sounds like we definitely have quorum, and so we will move right into the agenda. The first item on the agenda is the resignation of the chair and filling of the vacancy. Just so you all know, we all are aware Joe Bishop Henchman resigned effective, it's been over a week ago now. And under Roberts 32, Section 5, there's actually a requirement for the body to accept a resignation. It's not something we've typically done. In many ways, I find the process kind of unlibertarian because according to Roberts, you're basically conscripted until you're freed from your responsibilities by the committee. So I guess by my announcing that, it basically is a de facto motion to accept the resignation. Is there objection to accepting Mr. Joe Bishop Henchman's resignation? Not reluctance, not sadness, just objection. Okay. All right. Hearing no objection, his resignation is accepted.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Ms. Harlow.
Just for your reference, Mr. Smith has entered the meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Not Madam Chair, Madam Secretary.
No,
Sorry.
no.
I'm looking at the word chair. Sorry. So speaking of that, and as
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
If we're going to do that, is there an explicit requirement that we accept the resignations of Mr. Wendt and Mr. Coburn?
That has been something that's been debated. I am under the impression that because that is managed by the regional agreements, that we would not have to accept those because that's a matter for the regions to sort out. We as a body, and nor does the convention body that elects us, none of those, neither us nor the convention body can put people into those slots. And so I don't know that we have the authority even to accept those resignations. I think that would go to the regions to figure out through their regional agreements. Does that make sense, Mr. Lucchini?
Yes, thank you.
And Mr. Brown, does that make sense to you as well? I want to make sure we're technically correct on this.
Yes, I agree completely.
Okay, thank you. All right. So with the official resignation recognized by this body, this is the fun part where we get to figure out what we're doing next. And the ruling of the chair, as put out previously, is that Robert's Rules of Order, Section 4728, and Section 5632, cause an auto ascension of the vice chair to the chair. This would be an opportune time to object to that ruling.
Point of order.
Yes, point of order.
I object to that.
Okay.
ruling.
All right, Mr. Ferreira objects to that ruling. Is there a second to the objection?
Actually, well, technical question, not that I think it's going to matter because I think it's going to be objected to anyhow, but is Mr. Ferreira allowed to object as an alternate?
I believe he.
I will step back for the moment and Mr. Ferrer will take my place.
There you go.
Perfect. So Mr. Ferreira has objected. Is there a second to the objection?
Second.
Well, it should, Mr. Chair, it should actually be a point of order to your ruling. If he's subjecting to a ruling, then it would have to be a point of order.
Okay, a point of order.
I
right?
did raise a point of order.
He did. Mr. Ferreira did it the correct way. I apologize. This is new territory for me, for sure. So I apologize. I've tried to do the best that I can on this. Okay. So, Mr. Brown, help me here. I believe, is this objection debatable?
The point of order actually is not debatable. If the body wants to debate it, I suspect they might. I'm trying to figure how to do that. Other than
Might I suggest?
than to suspend the rules and permit debate on it.
Well, there may be an easier way through all of this. Is Ken, you say
Yeah.
that you are correct in your ruling, and that you cite the reasons why, and then somebody appeals your ruling, and then we go into debate whether we sustain your ruling.
That's where I was trying to head, yes. Mr. Brown, is that appropriate or not?
The appeal from your ruling would be, if somebody appeals from your ruling, then that would be debatable, yes.
Okay. So, okay, there's been an objection raised. I'm trying to figure out the order of operations here. I'm so sorry.
So what I heard is that Mr. Ferrer actually appealed your ruling.
That's what I heard too.
No. I wanted to make a point of order that I think his ruling is wrong. I'd like to give him a second chance to say his ruling is correct, and then I will appeal his ruling.
Yeah, that was the piece we were missing, yes. Yeah. So I'm going to say that, after receiving advice from multiple parliamentarians, that I believe my ruling is correct. And now,
I appeal the ruling of the chair.
There we go. So I'm hearing Mr. Ferreira appeal and Mr. Longstreth second. Is that correct?
Correct.
Excellent. All right. Now we're in debate. Now we got where we needed to be. All right. Let's see. Mr. Ferreira, I think you get the honors of speaking first if you would like.
That's a negative, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You get the first. You are allowed to speak first because it is your appeal. So you make your case, and then Mr. Ferreira, as first sponsor, would go first.
That's correct. The chair speaks first to his ruling. Others get to speak once, then the chair gets to close.
Speak last. Okay, got it. Perfect. Okay, very quickly here. You guys have seen it in the email. I have no intent to hold this job long term. I have other things to do with my life. After the end of the Jorgensen campaign, I did not pick up the slack hours in LP work. I've instead kind of put more time in my family and that stuff. And I'm rather enjoying that. So I would rather not do this job full time as chair because I am happier not doing that. I will do this job as long as you ask me to. because that was what I signed up for, I guess, even though I didn't really believe that it was auto ascension when I ran. But long story short is I'm here to help move the party forward, whatever that means. I'm just trying to follow the rules, and I'm hopeful that we all come to an agreeable solution today, or perhaps, you know, I saw a couple of notes that maybe want to push the final decision off a little bit. I'm okay as long as we're not going to make this. I don't want to do this for 13 months. That's all I say. So that's what I have to say about it. And with that, then, do I just call in the queue, or does the person who objected get first stab?
I get first stab.
Okay. Mr. Ferreira, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Chair. We all think you're doing a great job. And I think that when this goes to vote, if you put your name into the hat, you will most likely get the job. But I think you declaring yourself king, to use a term, I don't think is appropriate. I understand the parliamentarians that have weighed in on this. What they have failed to recognize is that we are libertarians and that we believe in due process, and that we think that we should be electing who is going to be our chair. I would argue that most members did not know the level of parliamentarian hijinks that we have in our ruling, to believe that when they were electing you vice chair, that meant you got to automatically ascend to chair, but that rather you would be acting chair until the chair position was filled. It is how we have done it in the past. And furthermore, if we want to go to this level of pedantic reading of Robert's rules, I believe that if you decline the automatic ascension, that is also a resignation on your part, which I don't think anyone would have wanted to say, which is the vice chair automatically has to become the chair, or they also have to resign. I think that is a terrible way to go about us doing our business. I would prefer if we voted this down and said that as libertarians, this is how we want it to work, and that our bylaws get amended in the future in order to make it very clear that this is how we wanted it to work, and we could go on with our day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ferreira. I'm looking to find my signal here. In order, we have Mr. Fishman from the gallery, and then also Ms. Harlos, and then also Mr. Buffman. Mr. Fishman, I'm going to ask if it's okay if we can skip over you and go to the LNC members first, and then I'll come back to you, Mr. Fishman. Ms. Harlos, you are recognized.
Okay, thank you. There's just a few decorum issues I'd like to raise, because not that I have any objection, but I will note some words in the prior argument that if I had made, there would be hell to pay, you know, hijinks, making somebody a king, pedantic, that sort of thing. Now, I don't object. I'm just asking for no double standards. But I think the ruling is indisputably correct, whether we like it or not, and that the bylaws committee should take a look at this. The fact that I also cannot find a parliamentarian to disagree, and I can find parliamentarians to disagree that the sky is blue. And I think we also are happily in the position that we would be happy with Ken. And the thing is, I understand Ken's argument. He doesn't want this to last 13 months. The fact is, if we go against what is a very clear ruling in what some members might perceive to be an agenda, fairly or not, this is going to get appealed to the Judicial Committee. And I would think arguing over this rather than we got the great candidate automatically ascends is the fastest way to get through this. Because again, anyone can appeal. And that will just drag it out longer. One other thing here, I'm just looking through my notes here. I do think TJ made some great points, however, and that the bylaws committee needs to consider that, because there is the really strange situation that if Ken refused, he would consider to have been resigned. I'm glad Mr. Fiera noted that, because that is the conclusion that I had come to too. But I don't believe that appeals should be used on things that are unambiguous to get a way that we would prefer, and rather just refer it to the delegates. So really, that's all I have to say, though I do appreciate that people can disagree in good faith.
Okay. All right. I have, after Ms. Harlos, I have Mr. Hagan, then Mr. Buffman, then Mr. Nana, then Mr. Smith. Mr. Hagan, you are recognized.
Thanks. Yeah, I actually agree, after reading the bylaws and the Roberts, agree with the ruling of the chair. However, I understand how other people come up with the opposite idea. And the chair has expressed, or Mr. Molman has expressed, that his skill sets and his desire is to remain the vice chair. And since this is basically concerning his rights, I'm going to abide by his desires and vote to overturn the ruling of the chair.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hagan. Mr. Buffman, sorry, I'm combining people's names today, and I'm so sorry. Mr. Buffman.
All right, can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes, sir.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm calling from a phone on this one. I'm going to agree with TJ on this for a couple reasons. We just went through the same issue with the resignation of our chair at the LPWI. We had both two professional parliamentarians agree with the fact that the executive committee appoints a new chair. If the vice chair doesn't automatically become the chair, and their bylaws are almost a mirror image of the LNC or the national bylaws. Furthermore, I think this is a dangerous precedent that we could set that bad actors could take advantage of, and I don't think we should be opening their Pandora's box on that. So again, I would oppose over.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Buffman. Mr. Nana.
All right. So this is a very strange position to be put in because I actually agree with the ruling of the chair. I think that because the bylaws aren't explicit in naming the chair as one of the offices rather than just referring to officers, and because it doesn't explicitly lay out a method for doing that, I actually agree with the ruling of the chair, but because he has asked us essentially to rule against him, I'm most likely going to abide by that request, which it's just a very strange situation to be in. But I would request that everybody vote against this ruling. That way we can get to everybody's desired result, which is a vacancy in the chair position, and then we can go about replacing that however we see fit.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Nana. I have Mr. Smith up next, and then after him, Mr. Phillips and Mr. Valente. Mr. Smith?
Sorry, I withdraw my hand.
Okay. All right. Then that makes Mr. Phillips, you're up, sir.
Lots of people have made lots of good points on both sides of this. I disagree with the ruling of the chair in that for the simple reason that we see this very commonly with all kinds of different legal avenues and interactions where it says one thing in one place and one thing in another place, and people don't always put those two together. The bylaws very clearly do define the chair as one of the officers. So that to me that answers that question. But regardless, your wish is to not assume this position full time, even if I did agree with you, would take precedent over that. And lastly, I just want to say that if this gets voted down, the appeal gets voted down for whatever reason, there is still an avenue around this that I need to put forward, which is that quite simply, Mr. Molman could resign, and then we could appoint a chair and then reappoint Mr. Molman to the vice chair. That is an avenue we could pursue if we decided to go down that rabbit hole of legalese. But I think that that's unnecessary, considering the fact that Mr. Molman has expressed a desire to not serve in this position. And so then we just move on.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Mr. Valente.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I would like to point out that, I'd like for us to follow precedents in that our previous two issues where we had a vacancy at the chair have been filled by the board in the 80s. And I think that is something that we should be looking at following as well. I do believe that the bylaws are clear. I do see Ken's reasoning. I just think that our bylaws should take precedence over a book that's written by people who are not libertarians. So That's my feelings, and I yield my time.
All right. Looks like I'm going to go back to Mr. Fishman here because I have Harlos up again, but I'm going to let Fishman, without objection, speak for his first round, if that's all right.
Hopefully my first and only round. Can you hear me, Mr. Molman?
We can hear you, Mr. Fishman.
Thank you.
And then he got muted.
It is very important to me to speak to who we are as libertarians. And who that is the people who understand that the rules that are written do not bind us if they make no sense. If you ask a carpenter, if you ask a parliamentarian how to fix something, he will suggest parliamentary rules. However, the rules that we wrote have a conflict with Roberts. Nobody can say that they don't because the rules clearly do. And we clearly have stated that the rules written by libertarians are the only rules that libertarians will live by. I urge everybody to support the rules that the libertarians wrote and support the bylaws and overturn the ruling of the chair. My final comment is, Ken Molman, I personally love you a great deal. Thank you.
Likewise, Dan. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fishman. All right, Ms. Harlos, up for round two.
Okay, I have a first a point of inquiry, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, this is Mr. Brown.
Yes, Mr. Brown.
Under the rules for an appeal, and Robert, the chair is the only member who gets to speak twice.
Okay.
The body can suspend that rule and allow, more speeches, but it's based on the rules. You get to speak twice. Everyone else gets to speak once.
What about a point of information, Mr. Brown?
That request for information would be permissible.
That's what I have.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Harlos.
Your various members have said that you wish for us to overturn your ruling. I've never seen you say that. So is that in fact your wish?
It is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. I'm not seeing any. Is there anyone else in the queue, Mr. Harris?
There is not.
Excellent.
Can I raise a point of order real quick?
Sure.
I love Mr. Brown, but as he's not a member of the body, I feel like he is speaking without being addressed. And I just want to make that, we don't allow other people to just jump in. And so I just wanted to point that out.
That has never been true.
Hang on, Ms. Sarwark, you are correct. Due to the fact that this is an electronic medium, it's kind of what makes this weird. The issue is that normally the parliamentarian would be whispering in my ear, or I would be, he would be waving his hands in a way that I would be able to see. Unfortunately, in this medium, it's very difficult. But I do understand the point of order. I think it's just I understand your concern, and it's just a weird issue with the platform. Normally, I would say, yes, of course, the parliamentarian should be, flagging the chair down, not speaking openly. But there's no, I don't have a good mechanism for Mr. Brown to tap me on the shoulder or wave his hands and I see it. And I guess that's where we're kind of stuck. But the point is well taken. I mean, you're right.
Thank you.
So, all right. So going to my quick response, the question of, could I just not take it under the ruling? No, somebody mentioned earlier that the only way to do that would be then to ascend to chair and resign, or to abdicate completely. I'm not really interested in doing that. I like being on this board. I like being the vice chair. I do think that there is a legitimate question as to which way our members think that the vice chair interacts with the chair. As you all are probably aware, not everybody reads every bylaw. And at least in my state, and I know in a few others, there is auto ascension of the vice chair. But I also know in neighboring states, such as Ohio, I believe, actually, there is not auto ascension. So it's really kind of a state by state, and what our members expect, I don't even know. The bylaws committee, 100% agree that's the solution. Ruling appeal to the JC, can we please not? Let's end the drama as quickly and peacefully and nice as possible. If people are appealing on my behalf, please don't. the precedence issue, it's definitely there. And then D. Frank Robinson chimed in the opposite way and whatever. I personally believe philosophically that no one should be auto-ascended unless the delegates make a clear mandate. And that's really where I came down on this. So that is why, while I'm compelled to rule in such a way, you know, in the conversation, I asked for this, and I hope that the bylaws committee does solve this once and for all long term. Maybe the body wants auto ascension. That's up to the body to decide, the convention body, not our body. And so that's where I'm at with this. Thank you. So, all right. So with that, I believe we go to a vote, and I'm going to try to make this easy. Is there objection to overturning my ruling?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Dang it. Okay, there's objection. All right, then I believe we need to vote. So, Madam Secretary, if you would go call the roll.
Mr. Chair, point of information.
Sorry. Okay, there's a point of information and out of order. I'm sorry. I heard them at the same time. Let's do the information first, and then we'll do the issue of out of order. Who had the point of information?
Mr. Phillips.
Okay, Mr. Phillips, go ahead.
Just for everybody's clarity's sake, because everybody gets confused, could you restate what a yes and a no vote means for everyone?
Absolutely. As I recall, the last time we did this, a yes would uphold my ruling and a no would overturn my ruling.
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. The proper way of stating the question is, quote, shall the ruling of the chair be sustained? And a yes vote sustains your ruling, a no vote overturns your ruling.
Thank you for that, Mr. Brown. Shall the ruling of the chair be overturned or sustained? Sustained. Shall the ruling of the chair, acting chair, be sustained? I'm writing that down in case there's a question again. Okay, so that is the question. Shall the ruling of the acting chair be sustained? And so a yes would be to sustain my ruling and I auto ascend. A no would be to overturn my ruling and the position of chair would remain vacant. And then there was I believe, an objection.
Now, point of order, but I withdraw. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. All right, so everybody's clear what we're voting on? Okay. Madam Secretary, can you call the roll, please?
Ms. Bilyeu.
No.
Mr. Bowen.
No.
Ms. Epke.
No.
Mr. Hagan.
No.
I am going to abstain. Mr. Hewitt.
TJ is still in for me.
Mr. Fiera.
No.
Ms. Hogarth. I'll come back. Mr. Longstreth.
No.
Mr. Nana.
No.
Mr. Nikela.
Nay.
Mr. Phillips.
No.
Mr. Radsep.
No.
Ms. Sarwark.
No.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Lucchini.
No.
Ms. Hogarth. Kate.
She typed in the chat, no.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Chair, 1 second, because this isn't auto calculating. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 no's, 1 yes, 1 express abstention.
Okay. Oh, do I get to vote on my own ruling? That seems like a conflict of interest.
You can, but you don't have to.
Yeah, that's, first of all, that sounds like a conflict of interest, and voting on it. Yeah, no, I'm not going to vote. If I felt better about it, I'd vote no, but that would be weird. So
I think I miscounted, Mr. Chair. It's 13 no's,
13.
one
Yeah.
yes, one express abstention.
Yeah. And I will not vote. Cool. So we got that settled. Then the next part is actually filling the chair.
Yeah,
vacancy.
Mr. Chair, just for the sake of the minutes, you probably
yes,
should
I need to
actually
repeat it.
announce the result.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So in the matter of the ruling of the chair being sustained, the ruling is 1 yes, 13 no, 1 expressed abstention. The ruling of the chair is overturned. So
Mr.
now,
Point of privilege.
go ahead, Mr. Ferrer.
I believe Mr. Hewitt is now ready to take his seat back, so I'm going to go back into the galley. And before I get too many angry emails, I would like to remind everyone that Mr. Molman asked me to do this.
Yes. No, I will take this opportunity and tell everyone that this is the desired outcome. So don't be mad. It's okay. All right. So the next item then would be starting to try to fill this vacancy. And I am open to whatever this body would like to do with that. If someone wants to make a motion or whatever, it is entirely up to
Mr.
this
Chair,
body.
I have a motion.
Okay, Mr. Phillips, go ahead.
I would move that we take nominations for the next week after the ending of this meeting, and then do an email vote.
Okay.
I will second that.
Was that Mr. Rodsep on the second?
Yes.
Okay. So, Mr. Phillips, you've made a motion that we take nominations for the next week upon the close of this meeting, and then conduct a vote via email ballot. And that has been seconded by Mr. Rodsep, Mr. Rodsep. Mr. Phillips, would you like to speak to your motion?
A point of information,
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Hagan.
would that be a ranked choice voting or what method?
That's a very good point. Mr. Phillips, I'm going to let you speak anyway. So if you want to clarify which method you would prefer and then speak to it.
I would, typically we do approval voting, so I had just assumed that.
Okay.
And other than that, I have, I think it speaks for itself.
All right. Let me pull up my signal so I can look at the queue. All right. So this looks like this is the new queue, Mr. Harris, starting with Mr. Nana. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Perfect. All right. I have Nana, then Longstreth, then Harlos up first. So Mr. Nana, you are recognized.
I agree in principle with this. I wonder if the body would maybe want to extend that to 14 days instead of 7. 7 might be a kind of a quick turnaround. As far as I know, everybody has withdrawn interest other than Mr. Moulton at this point. I don't know of anybody else that still has interest that's in the public, and I don't know if 7 days is going to be enough to get enough people a chance to apply. But I'm not asking for an amendment yet, just floating the idea.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Nana. Mr. Longstreth.
Yes. So I would like to. So I want to move to amend Mr. Nana's suggestion. I think 14 days is a more appropriate time frame. So we'll start there. I do have another amendment outside of that, though, but we'll start there.
Okay. So Mr. Longstreth moves to amend to change the period for the next week for the next 14 days. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. There were multiple seconds. I hope the secretary will catch those. Mr. Longstreth, would you like to speak to your amendment?
I believe it's self-explanatory.
Perfect. All right. So this is the fun part where we're already inside. So Ms. Harless, do you want to speak to the amendment, or would you like to hold till we get back to the main motion?
I would like to hold. I have a different amendment.
All right. I'm going to put you over here. I'm writing down back to the main queue. Next in the queue, I have Hagan, Lucchini, Elente. Mr. Hagan, did you want to speak to the amendment or to the main motion?
The main motion.
All right. Mr. Lucchini, where are you at on that?
I believe I'm speaking to the amendment.
Okay. To move from 7 to 14 days.
Correct. I think 14 is too long, and plus it puts us back on another Sunday, which destroys another weekend for me. I'm sorry, my family is cranky. Could we do like 10 days? Something that's not quite puts us right back on a weekend. It's just a suggestion, friendly suggestion.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lucchini. Next, I have Valente, Sarwark, and Phillips. Mr. Valente, do you want to speak to the main motion or to the amendment?
Main motion and amendment.
All right, put you back in here, Valente. Ms. Sarwark, main motion or amendment?
I don't, both. I want to agree with Mr. Lucchini. 10 days is more, I think, more appropriate. I think a lot of people were kind of waiting to see if you were going to be placed as chair or not before making an announcement. So I don't think that we necessarily need 2 whole weeks. I think people were kind of just waiting to see what was going to happen. And also, I don't know where this would fall, but some sort of way to allow the people who would like to place their name into consideration to speak on their behalf, whether it be at that meeting or ahead of that meeting. Just putting that out there. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Sarwark. Mr. Phillips, did you want to speak to the amendment or to the main motion?
To the amendment.
All right, go ahead.
Everybody's brought up some valid points on extending the time. But the flip side of that is that I have to say that the only reason I made this motion was as kind of a compromise, because in my mind, we need to finish this as soon as possible. And that leaving our members and our staff and everybody kind of in a state of limbo regarding all this is an issue. So, I mean, originally I would have liked to have been done with this today. But in deference to other people's wishes, I made the motion to extend to 7 days. So I don't really support extending it to 14. I do see Mr. Lucchini's point about another Sunday. So if somebody wanted to make an amendment so that it was Monday night or something, I would be amenable to that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Next, I have Nana, Nikayla, and Bilyu, and then I'm going to jump in with one quick note after Ms. Bilyu. But go ahead, Mr. Nana.
Thank you. So the reason why I support 14 days is, as previously stated, I don't think 7 days is going to give enough time for interested parties to decide whether or not they actually want to do this. This is a big decision. This is a life-altering decision for many people. So, some people might want to take more than a week to think about it. Somebody might want to declare on day 8. So I think we would do the members and ourselves, the members of the party at large, and the members of this body a disservice by cutting it to only 7 days.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Nana. Next is Mr. Nikayla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm with John Phillips on this one. I'd like to speak against the amendment. Let's just get this out of the way. I don't think that parties that actually are interested in running for chair need that long of a time to make a decision. It's a decision they're going to have to make. They're not going to Mars. They just need to figure out if they're running. So with that said, if we want to do this Monday, I will make an amendment to the amendment to push this to Monday night, make it 8 days from today, and we go from there.
Okay.
Point of information, Chair?
Yes, Mr. Rata.
The original motion was to receive nominations for a period of 7 days, and then we would vote via email.
That is correct.
Does everyone's mentioning Sunday? Does this change? Does the amendment somehow change the fact that we're going to be voting via email? There's no physical meeting.
The nature of the amendment is not that. It is literally just keeping the nomination period open for 14 days, and it would be done by approval voting on online.
All right. In that
Thank
case,
you for the information.
If that's the case, if we're not meeting Sunday, then I withdraw that amendment. I'll be voting against it, though. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Nikayla. Ms. Billiam?
Yeah, I just want to say that 14 days is too long. I do appreciate the sentiment of 7 days being too few. But at this point, I feel like anybody who has any interest at all or has been asked to consider it probably has already done so. So I would be amenable to a 10-day, but 14 days is too long. And I also thank you, Mr. Rodset, for clarifying that I was confused about why we were talking about meetings on Sundays and things like that, because as the way this motion reads, there's no meeting. It's a ballot by
Which is why I
emails.
originally said email vote, and then I forgot.
Yeah, it's okay. Thank you.
All right. All right.
Oh, sorry, I forgot I was muted.
So I wanted to jump in here real fast, but it looks like Mr. Rodsep is next, and then that's the end of the queue. So I'm going to let Mr. Rodsep go ahead and speak if you would like, Mr. Rodsep.
Actually, I've lowered my hand.
Okay, perfect. Then I'm just going to note that whatever happens here, whatever we decide, I'm going to make sure that whatever I'm actually aware of, and I've already informed Mr. Harris of this, whatever I'm actually informed of in this acting role will be transitioned to the next person whenever that occurs. So just making sure people are aware that I've made that commitment that they won't be coming in cold. So that's the only thing I have there. So if is there any, Mr. Longstreth's hand is back up. Okay, Mr. Longstreth, you're recognized.
Yes, I just wanted to one more time. The reason why 14 days is what I'm considering is right now our timeline would be 14 days to decide. There's obviously some sense that 2 weeks to decide, a week for applications, and then voting for a week is somewhat desirable. If we extend it to 14 days, then we could allow people to declare up to 10 days, but then have a meeting scheduled on, say, Friday or Saturday to actually let the candidates speak, not just to us, but to the public right before we vote. And I think that would be a very valuable aspect of this process. I don't think this is something that we should be doing by email ballot. At the very least, we could have an optional attendance, not an official meeting, but a forum, if you will.
Point of order?
Yes, it is. This is my suggestion is that we could have a meeting and get the vote done at the 14th day. So if the concern is time and that it would extend past a month, that we would still be at 14 days if we have a meeting and decide at the meeting.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Longstreth. Ms. Harless, did you have another point of order, or was it just in reference to what Mr.
No, it just seemed to go far afield of the amendment. But no,
Okay.
that's okay.
All right.
How
All right.
about
Is there any
request for
more?
information, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Billiam.
Is it true that we have an LNC call scheduled for Sunday, the 11th already of July?
I think we canceled our July 4th, but I could be wrong.
No, July 11th. I'm showing it on July 11th for some reason, but that could be an error. But
I thought we talked about it, but I don't remember actually doing it, but I'm honestly not 100% sure.
Madam Secretary, do you?
I would have to, my memory is not so good because I kind of had a traumatic couple of weeks. I could go back through the voting records and let you know. So I'll do that. Do you all want me to take a few minutes to do that now?
Well, I think that would be helpful because Longstreth is shooting for 2 weeks, and that puts us right at 2 weeks. And that's a call that potentially is already scheduled. I've got a Zoom link for it in my calendar. So
take a look at that.
Either it's magic or it's.
Yeah, if you got a link, then I would probably defer to that it exists.
I'm going to look it up right now on mine here. Ms. Billiou, does it show who created that meeting?
Give me a second. I need to open it on my computer.
And I'm flipping through the voting records. I remember us discussing it, but I don't think we voted on it.
I don't have it in mind, but I also don't have a lot of meetings in mind for some reason. So unfortunately, my Gmail account has never been right.
I just want to suggest that this is a very good reason why I suggest we look at using that internal calendar a little bit more. Just want to go ahead and plug that as a good idea.
Yes.
I do not.
When I click the link, it does not go to. It doesn't go anywhere. So,
Mr. Chair,
that means.
I see that on March 29th, we canceled our April and May meetings, but I do not see, or we canceled them. I'm just saying, dealing with our monthly meetings. I don't see a ballot where we did that for July. I know we talked about it, but I don't think we actually did it.
I'm going to look. I know when we had the slight controversy over it previously, I went through the calendar and found all the other days that were holidays that we were scheduled to meet. I'm quite sure that the 4th was the first one I found. I just can't seem to find it myself though now.
We did not vote on this. There's no motion for it.
Okay. I think you're right. I think,
So does that mean we have a
Yeah.
meeting next week?
Mr. Chair, so I found a thread where you confirmed that we did cancel our 4th of July meeting. Laura Epke also said we canceled it. I'm of the mind that we're not all insane and that this actually did happen, but we're having trouble finding it because there are so many emails in our inbox since then. But I guess I could be wrong. But everybody seems to think we've canceled it. So and that was my recollection as well.
okay, I found the thread. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Ferrara.
At the Chicago meeting, I asked our chair at that time whether or not we had meetings scheduled for July or August, and he said they had not been called yet, which would make me think that we had not actually scheduled those. We had marked them off on some of our calendars when we were talking about original dates, but they were never officially called.
Okay. Let's see. I see lots of chatter about doing it, but it doesn't look like we've done it. And since one of the meeting items coming up is LNC meeting, perhaps we should fix that when we get there. One of the items on our agenda. But yeah, I actually don't see a ballot for this either. It looks like we talked about it and then we didn't act on it. So technically,
Actually, I just found the email.
Oh, you did. You did. Okay.
So it was email ballot 202103229-01, move July LNC meeting.
Well, let me find it. Let me see here. Thank you, sir.
And it is July the 11th that we moved it to.
There you go. I did find it. You are an officer and a gentleman.
I resemble those remarks. No.
And a better user of the search bar than the rest of us, obviously. So, all right. So we do have a meeting scheduled for the 11th already, which is 14 days from today.
Correct.
So okay.
Given that, Longstreth's proposal makes sense.
Okay.
I also would withdraw my objection to 14 days if we have that meeting scheduled.
Okay. All right, so let's get the amendment dispensed with and let's get back to the main motion so we can be a little more free in our discussion. Right now on the floor is the amendment to change the period of time to take nominations from being for the next week upon the close of this meeting to being for the next 14 days upon the close of this meeting. Is there any further discussion about the amendment from 1 week to 14 days? Okay, I'm not hearing any. I see that people have their hands up, but that's probably for the main queue. So if that's not the case
Chair,
right now,
it may be a good idea on second consideration. Can I move to amend the amendment? I'm sorry to be a pain, but let's make it 10 days. That way we have 3 days to make sure that people know about our meeting. We can review some applications, do some independent research, and that sort of thing.
I will allow it, but may I suggest that maybe we get back to the main motion and just amend it there? And
Well,
maybe we go into a committee of the whole and just knock this in one shot again?
Mr. Chair, I'm not opposed to the change, but I don't think he can amend his own amendment. I could be wrong, but I'm not sure you're allowed to.
That's my concern. I really don't know.
Okay. Well, what my thought was is if we dispense with this amendment, we're going to go back to the main motion. It sounds like there's a couple more tweaks, and rather than go through the formal amendment process, maybe we just go into a committee of the whole, adopt the body amendment out of that, and then we just pass that. Would that be okay for everybody?
Well taken.
Because I think there's going to be a couple more tweaks. That's all. So, all right. So, with no further discussion, we are now voting on just switching the time frame from 1 week to 14 days. Is there objection to switching this out to 14 days and getting back to the main motion? I am hearing no objection. And so we're now back to the main motion as amended. And if someone would like to make a call to enter the committee of the whole,
Yes,
maybe we
Mr.
can.
Chair, I would like to move that we enter committee of the whole to discuss this motion.
All right.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Sorry, Miss. Now I'm sorry. Writing things down and talking is hard. Yes, Ms. Harless.
Things have gotten really chaotic, and moving into committee of the whole is not a privileged motion, and other people have been waiting patiently. Now, I don't
Okay.
object to doing that. I'm just saying.
I'm sorry.
Things have gotten like everyone's cross-talking, and it's difficult.
Yeah, I understand.
Do you want to run down the queue? I believe I'm number one in the queue, which is why I jumped in.
Mr. Nenny, you're not, but we'll
right.
get there. So it is actually Miss Harlow. So I apologize. I jumped ahead. I'm trying to push this a little too hard here to get to the end. Miss Harlow, you are recognized. I'm sorry.
I don't mind making that motion to committee of the whole if I can actually make my amendment once we enter committee of the whole.
Yes, that'll be that. Anything once we get in the committee of the whole, will be a lot more free. We'll hammer out what we need, and we'll come back out here and hopefully pass whatever we come out with.
Then I would make that motion.
Okay. The motion has been made to enter the committee of the whole. Is there a second?
I will second.
Mr. Rodsev seconds. Excellent. Is there any objection to entering the committee of the whole? Hearing no objection, we are now in the committee of the whole. I'm going to turn my page here so I can keep track of what level we're at. Where we sit right now is that we're taking applications for 14 days and then doing an approval voting email ballot, or not email, but electronic ballot. That's where we're at right now. I heard in discussion talk about speeches. I heard in discussion about maybe cutting the time frame a little shorter and holding this in conjunction with a to be already scheduled, actually, July 11th meeting. So we can just add it to our agenda there. I just figure, there was like 3 or 4 things thrown out, and rather than go through the amendment process for all those, plus whatever else we come up with, we could just knock it out here.
So, Mr. Chair.
Point of information real quick.
Yes.
I believe my motion was for nominations, not applications.
I'm sorry. Yes, nominations.
I don't want us to have to sit there and take applications.
No. Yes, I am so sorry.
Clarification. Will there
that.
be nominations, and will the nominations require a second?
I don't believe nominations ever require a second, actually, for office. I'm pretty sure any eligible member can nominate any eligible member without a second required.
Thanks.
So,
Unless somebody wants to tell me I'm wrong.
No, you're correct. But since you had said I could, I think I'm on the same page with Mr. Longstreth with this, that we should have, I don't care about the time period for taking nominations, quite honestly, but I think we need to have this vote at a meeting. And we need to give the applicants time to speak, and perhaps for us to ask them questions. I think the membership deserves that. And, an email vote to elect a new chair, to me, email votes should be for relatively routine things. So I would hope this committee of the whole would consider us dealing with this at our July 11th meeting, since it's already set.
I, of course, will echo that and urge that we adopt that however we need to. I'm not quite sure on the process in these sorts of things, but yeah.
Yeah, I think mainly it's a question of figuring out, we're more free flow here. Like, this is like being in a subcommittee, right? So that's why it's a lot nicer. So
point of information.
Go ahead, Ms. Adams.
Do we have a process set aside for nominations, or are we just gonna jump in and hope we don't screw this up?
So I was going to talk to that here in a moment, that, we could either build a form on the website that would let people self-nominate or nominate someone. There's going to need to be a process of validating that people want to accept the nomination before we accidentally make someone chair who doesn't want to be. The mundane details. So there was talk about the 10 days thing, the length of time being open. And I think that if we did 10 days with nominations open, spent 3 days validating everybody who wants to be nominated, and then on the 11th, let me see if that math is right. Am I doing the math right on that? 10 days or 3 days of validation?
Mr. Chair, I have another point of information.
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Adams.
So we are closing nominations prior to the meeting, or when we roll into our meeting, let's say I just decided I wanted to nominate Mr. Lucchini at the meeting. Would that be possible then? Or would I need
No,
to do
would
that?
not, because I would decline.
Well, Chris, I know, I was trying to make a safe hypothetical here, man.
I don't think so. If we close nominations in 10 days, my personal opinion would be that the nominations are being closed.
Correct. Once nominations are closed, that's it.
Of course, the
Mr.
body
Chair.
can always, in the meeting, suspend the rules if that's what they decide
Correct.
to do.
Mr. Chair, this is Mr. Brown.
Go ahead, Mr. Brown. This is a good parliamentary question.
Nominations can be reopened by a majority vote.
Okay. So if we get to the meeting and for some reason we want to add more people, then we can do that. We can reopen nominations during the meeting.
So, I don't know if this is a general question to the body, I suppose. So I heard a lot of people say we want to vote at a meeting. How are we going to approval vote at a meeting?
We'll take an open vote. We'd have to do an open vote, but we can do it during the meeting.
That's what I took email ballot to mean was open vote, like you would but I mean, maybe that's not what everybody else was thinking.
And I would rather us do ranked choice voting rather
Me
than
too.
voting.
Yes.
For the
Ranked
love of
choice.
God.
Oops, I just showed support for something.
Yeah, that's why I originally put my hand up, because I want to move to change it to ranked choice voting.
Thank
I hate approval voting.
Yay.
I've learned while serving on the LNC to not like approval voting.
Agree.
Is anyone on approval vote?
All right. So let's do this. Let's settle that one right now, actually. Approval versus ranked choice. Is there objection to switching it to ranked choice instead of approval?
Which form of
Point of
ranked choice?
What's that? I'm sorry?
Which method of ranked choice? Single transferable?
Single transferable is only applicable in multi-seat races. There's a lot of confusion about ranked choice. In just one winner race, it's instant runoff voting. STV is only for multi-winner races.
So I hate to do this, but what kind of instant runoff? There's so unfortunately, people keep dreaming up new ways to do ranked choice, and it's now gotten to the point where I kind of oppose it.
This was my point, Dustin, not that I had a preference. I was throwing out single transferable just
Right, I'm okay
to start
with it.
conversation.
All on the same page before we get there, which means we need to literally specify, there's Condorcet, non-Condorcet, there's 6 million ways to do it now. And I just want us to all be clear on exactly what we were doing.
Right.
And that's actually why I was looking at approval, because approval, while we don't like it, is simple for people to understand.
We do like it though. I just want to point out that if we are going to be doing open vote either way, there is still a reason for the meeting, or still a reason for us to do that at the meeting, which would be at the 14-day mark. Some people might be confused about that if the vote's going to happen by email / open vote either way, what would be the purpose of us having this as an agenda item for the meeting? Would we have those ballots go out right then and be returned right then?
I think the purpose, Ms. Billiard, would be to actually hear from the candidates.
At the meeting.
They would have an opportunity to give their speeches for why they want to run. And I would assume we would wait until we get closer to that meeting to decide how much time to give. If we end up with 100 people, we're going to probably be closer to the 30 seconds to 1 minute. If we end up with 5 people, maybe we give them 2, 3, 5 minutes. Who knows, right? Maybe we give them how much time they get in convention. That's for this body to decide when we get closer there.
And of course, as someone already mentioned, then nominations can be reopened at the meeting anyway. So I just want to make sure we're clear on the vote, that it would still take place during that meeting, not that we'd get ballots and 4 days later have to return them. We're still planning to make the decision that day, but through open vote.
Yes.
Okay.
And the way I look at way ranked choice voting goes is kind of like the way we do our presidential, our officers at convention, that first round bottom person's taken off and their votes are transferred to their second choice. Second round, the last person is taken off, their votes are transferred to the to their third or second or third choice, and then from there.
I'm okay with that. I just want us to clarify that, because it isn't the only way to go.
Right.
And if we're not all on the same page, we're going to get into this meeting and this is not going to be good.
Right.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ms. Ellis.
Okay, just to hopefully bring some clarity here. When we've used instant runoff voting in OPA there is a very widely accepted version of it that's just called the general version of IRV. And it's the way where it comes into effect is how it deals with backwards and forwards tie breaking. I think as long as we pick one and just stick with that, I think we'll be fine. It's not like there's a million different options. So I could send to everyone by email the different options that OPA Vote has if we just want to pick one. It gets more complicated with single transferable vote, but IRV is pretty simple.
So you if I heard you right, you said it's the quote unquote general version.
Yeah,
of IRV?
I'm going to go in here into OPA Vote and see what kind of, that's my understanding, but let me go in here and I'll get you some information in just one moment.
If you can get a specific name for that type or
Certainly.
some way to label it, that I think will end this controversy, I hope.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Hagan.
I'm at the OPA Vote website, and then they have a recommendation. If you're electing a single person, we recommend that you use the San Francisco RCV.
Okay.
If we do San Francisco, I'm going to oppose it on the grounds that it's a random tiebreaker, and I'm not cool with that.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Ms. Epke.
It seems to me that we have a couple of things going on here. And there might be a way to address this. First of all, we don't know how many people might actually decide to place their names in nomination in one way or the other. If we have 10 or 15 or 20, that's going to make anything on that Sunday perhaps a bit unwieldy. So I had suggested this in an email, and I will suggest it now, that if we reach a point above a certain threshold, and I don't know, maybe that's 5 people who have placed their names in nomination, that we hold sort of an approval voting primary and narrow it down to the top 3 to 5 candidates, so that we aren't having to listen to speeches that, conduct an interview of sorts before we actually conduct the final vote.
And I have your answer, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Give me the answer, Ms. Harless, and then let's go back.
It's just called instant runoff voting. It's the general version that's on OPA Vote.
Yeah, the general version does not include random tiebreakers. So
no, it does not.
Yeah, that would be my personal preference.
And that's what I have used when we've done this in the past. I noticed some suggestions in chat for Coombs method and all that. That is for single transferable vote, and that's not what we're talking about here. IRV is much, much simpler. And general IRV is what the advocacy groups throughout the country, such as RCV Colorado, are using. It is the generally accepted method. It's not controversial for IRV. STV is a whole other animal.
All right. So let's do this. Ms. Ebke brought up a point about a narrowing process or a primary, quote unquote. Is there interest from this body in it going down that route?
Yes. It bears on 2 questions. If only LNC members can nominate and there being a pre-filter, that's one thing. If people at large can nominate themselves, that is going to be absolutely mandatory. I have already gotten 2 people who contacted me, and the phone message I received, I would not ever nominate these people. So
you bring up a good point, Mr. Lucchini, and as I think about this, I don't think the members of the general membership are allowed. I think because the way the rules are written that the LNC elects, I think that means we also do the nominating.
Mr. Chair, that was my understanding as well, which I kind of just assumed that, which we know what happens when you assume. But when I
Right.
made the original motion that that it would be members of the LNC nominating.
I'd like to ask Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown, is that correct? The body that elects is the body that nominates, barring
Yes.
any other special rule?
Yes, I would say Mr. Phillips is correct. Yes.
Perfect. All right. So does the body feel like we want to still go look at the narrowing process, or are we going to make sure that because we're doing the nominating, we're inflicting our own damage, as it were? Is that what's the feeling of this body?
I would argue that if we have more than 5 candidates, it becomes unwieldy to have those people speak to the meeting. And maybe, you know, I'm not wedded to the number 5, but I think if things go above a certain number of nominations, and perhaps what we do is we wait until the 10th day, 3 days before the meeting, and to decide, you know, we've got 27 candidates. Maybe we do a down select by approval voting to the, you know, the highest 5 or something.
I kind of agree with Mr. Lucchini. I think narrowing the number is beneficial.
Are we getting in line here, or
It's committee of the whole, and I apologize. I kind of try to let this free flow, but if there's somebody that's getting talked over or isn't getting a word in.
No, Mr. Chair, I would request that we do hands, because I think if we don't,
Okay.
we're going to sit here and talk in circles until 9 p.m.
Okay, that's fine. Mr. Harris, if you can help me out here.
I see Harlos, Valente, Nana, and Ferreira.
Carlos, Valente, Nana.
Mine is
Okay.
for the main motion, so.
Okay.
Just get
So, Ms. Harlos, go ahead.
I'm not in favor of some kind of primary or anything like that. That's not something we typically do in the Libertarian Party. And we could have a million candidates sometimes at convention that declare for chair, and we handle it just fine. Let's please not overcomplicate this.
Okay. All right. And I think I heard Valente had his hand up for the main motion. So next would be Nana.
I'm gonna basically echo what Ms. Harlos just said. The more we sit here and talk about all the little tiny ways we can perfect this, the longer we're gonna be here. We need to just do something and stick with it. So my plug right now is gonna be for 14 days that we have nominations open, and then we go into the meeting. We have these people talk. We are allowed to limit their time. We don't have to give them 30 minutes apiece. We can say, hey, you get 3 minutes, go ahead. And then that way 5 people takes 15 minutes. That's not very burdensome in my opinion. And then we can do the mail ballot. We can do the OPA vote. We can vote online, and then it'll be done. I think that's the way to go. If we don't need a primary because we're doing instant runoff, and we don't need to limit the number of people because we can limit their amount of time talking at the meeting. There's no, you know, if it's 20 people, well, too bad. Now you all get 1 minute, you know, whatever.
Okay. All right. Next is Mr. Ferreira. Then I have Mr. Hewitt after that.
My question was really a question of privilege. I don't know my status on this committee as a whole right now. When we hear the committee as a whole, are the alternates full committee members and are voting, or are we still alternates at this point?
The goal is to try to reach some sort of consensus. Yes, and yes, whoever said that he sounds like Darth Vader is correct. But nice. The point is that, sorry, the chat's distracting. I quit reading that. I mean, the goal here is to try to reach some sort of acceptable, everybody's good with this process, right? We all know what we need to do. I think at this point we have universal agreement on we're going to do this thing on the 11th because we already have a meeting, right? I mean, does anybody think that's a bad idea at this point, the 11th? Not hearing that.
Mr. Chair, you can take straw polls, by the way, but we can't do motions.
Right. So, and I always try to drive these to consensus because usually there's a consensus answer that can be found usually. So that's kind of where I'm at with this, Mr. Ferreira, is trying to get from this body, not just what would pass, but what the majority would want, that everybody's going to be happy or happy enough, and we get the work done. So Let me go to Mr. Hewitt. And then Bill, you is after Mr. Hewitt.
Yeah, look, there's 15 or 16 of us on this body. Maybe we want to go ahead and limit it to one nomination per member of the body. There's going to be some members that don't even nominate anyone. I think if we do that and don't have somebody come in and nominate 3 or 4 people, I think that limits the number of people that we have, probably at 10 or 12 at the very most. And then we can give them their 5 minutes or whatever to tell us why they should be the chair. But if you guys don't mind, let's limit it to 1 each, and then we have to be a little bit more selective ourselves on who we want to nominate.
Okay, I think that might be a compromise that might work. Does anybody object to saying 1 nominee per LNC member?
Mr. Chair, just a point of clarification. Does that include alternates, or does that not include alternates?
I personally would let it include alternates, but that again is up to kind of the body to decide.
I'm good either way. I just want us to be clear.
Yeah, my proposal would be not alternates, because I assume each individual on their, along with their, they have that camaraderie with their alternates anyway. So I'd say keep it down to, and if the alternate, talks with their rep themselves, and then so be it, that they can come down to that. We can refine it down, but let's keep it at 1 per member, not including alternates, and go with that. And you don't have to come up with, nobody has to come up with one necessarily.
And
are we doing hands?
Yes, but I think I have Bill you next, and then Mr. Lucchini, would you like to come after Miss Bill you, assuming nobody else?
My hand is up, Mr. Moore.
I put my hand down.
Sorry. Okay, Bill you's down. Okay, I'm getting an updated list. Sorry. Okay, I have Mr. Lucchini and then Miss Adams. Mr. Lucchini.
I believe Miss Adams was first.
I don't know. If you don't object,
fine. I'll go ahead. And I actually object to 2, because I actually have 2 people I intend to nominate. I believe that the committee should make a choice in terms of our future direction. So,
okay.
I would object to alternates not being included. And here's why. I may be inclined to nominate my representative. And she may be less inclined to nominate herself.
Yeah, that makes sense. Mr. Lucchini, if you're alternate, which you don't even have right now, is that correct?
I do not have an alternate. I'm hoping to close that voting on Thursday or Friday.
Okay. Here's what I will tell the body is that I don't plan to nominate anybody, because I'm going to try to stay out of this. If it comes down to there's 1 person left that, by whatever rule we come up with, it's just 1, I'll just nominate him and let somebody else speak to him.
That's good. What if it's 6?
Right. Then we've got a problem. So, but then we also have a lot of nominees.
I suspect a lot of us are going to nominate the same people.
And that may be. So, okay, Miss Adams went. Mr. Lucchini, did you go? I apologize. I lost track of where we were.
Yes,
you did go
for a second.
You did.
Yes.
Yeah. And then Miss Adams, you went as well. And then Mr. Nana.
I'm gonna make a plea again that we stop talking in circles and go. And I'm actually, at this point, I'm gonna move that we go out of committee of the whole so that we can go out. I know, but we're never gonna get out of this if we don't, in my opinion.
I second that. I think Mr. Nana is correct.
All right. There's been a motion and a second to rise from the committee of the whole. Is there objection to rising from committee of the whole?
I object on the grounds that I just need, do we have an actual consensus motion that we're going to take with us?
I don't believe so. But okay, so there's been an objection.
Point of information, where are we at on the, kind of read to us what we've got as far as a kind of motion going.
Okay. We have 2 options on the period that nominations will be open, either open for 10 days with a 3-day eligibility verification and nomination exception period, or just 14 days for nominations, basically through till we get to the meeting on the 11th. We've, I think, definitively defined that we want speeches on the 11th at that meeting as part of the agenda, and that this will be part of the agenda of the 11th meeting. I think we're at OPA vote using the general version of IRV. Something not mentioned, but I think everybody will agree to, is that NOTA is always an option. And then we had a suggestion about the primary, if there's more than 5 candidates, but that didn't seem like it had majority support. I was going to get back to that. And then there was talk about limiting the number of people that could be nominated. There was 1 per voting LNC member, 1 per LNC member, and then there was also that there were 2 possibility that somebody might want to nominate 2. And so that's kind of where this conversation has driven to at this point.
Mr. Chair, maybe I misread the room, but easy to do over internet. But I thought we had kind of generally achieved a consensus on the 10-day and 3-day.
Okay. So that's where we're at. And there's been a motion and a second to leave the committee, to rise from the committee of the whole. There has been objection to that. So Ms. Harlos, if you would not mind, please do the roll for rising out of, we are voting on whether to rise from the committee of the whole or not. A vote of yes will take us from the committee of the whole back to the main meeting.
Okay, and yes, and just an FYI, Mr. Chair, we really aren't in committee of the whole. We're in quasi committee of the whole. There's not much difference, but I just like people to be educated on Roberts. So just for technicality purposes. Ms. Bilyeu?
No.
Mr. Bowen?
Yes.
Ms. Epke?
Yes.
Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
I'm going to skip myself for now. Mr. Hewitt?
No.
I'm sorry? I didn't hear you.
That is a no. My mute was going off on me.
Ms. Hogarth?
No.
Mr. Longstreth?
Abstain.
Mr. Hall? I mean, Mr. Nana, excuse me.
Yes.
Mr. Nikela?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Abstain.
Mr. Roudsep?
Yes.
Ms. Sarwark?
No.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Lucchini?
No.
Okay, I am going to vote yes. So, Mr. Chair, it is 8 yes, 5 no, 2 express abstentions.
And I will not vote. But that means, what was it? It was 8, 5, 2. Is that correct?
Well, with your abstention, it's 3, so 8, 5, 3.
Okay. So at 853, the motion to rise from the committee of the whole passes. We are now back in the main meeting and back to the main queue, which when we left off, I had Mr. Hagan, Mr. Valente, and Ms. Sarwark up. So Mr. Hagan.
I lowered my hand.
Okay, Mr. Valente.
Personal privilege, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ms. Harlos.
I have to run to the bathroom for 2 minutes.
Is there objection to taking a 5-minute break? Recess for 5 minutes? Maybe someone could talk to Mr. Hagan about making a motion while we're doing that.
That's what I was about to ask. What am I about to move?
So, all right, I'm not hearing any
Let's go ahead and
objections.
do the break.
I'm not hearing any objections. So let me see what time it is here. It is 1:23 by my clock Eastern time. So let's just come back at 1:30. Let's say 1:28, but let's be real and we'll start back at 1:30. But try to be back here at 1:28, and we'll be in recess until then. And if someone has language they would like to hand to Mr. Hagan, or perhaps Ms. Sarwark, who is immediately behind him, that would be awesome. So we'll be back in 5 minutes.
My hand is lowered. You can take me off your list.
Oh, okay, Miss. All right. Well, then, Mr. Hagan, it all comes down to you, sir. Just want to let you know we're all counting on you.
After I take my break.
So,
And
all right.
when we learn, is it going to be, we're going to be returning the main motion will be the motion we workshopped while we were body of the whole?
No.
That's what I will be moving.
Oh,
right.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep. So, all right. Yep, that's what we'll be when we get back. That's the next, I hope, motion. So, all right. See you all in a few minutes.
Mr. Hagan, are you back yet?
Yes, I am.
I believe that the motion you want to make is that we are going to, at the conclusion of this meeting, have a 10-day period for nominations.
And we nominate by posting on the business list?
Yeah, that seems to make sense to me. Then we hadn't actually discussed that, but that seems to make sense. But then with speeches to be given on the meeting at the speeches by nominees to be given at the meeting on the 11th, with voting to follow that meeting by OPA vote with IRB.
Can the voting be during the meeting instead of following? That's
well, I mean, with OPA, the problem with OPA vote is we all know sometimes it takes a bit for us to get our emails.
But we did it during convention. We did it in real time during convention, and if people had problems getting their emails, we squared it, or we took their vote.
I mean,
you know.
I'm fine with it being during the meeting. I just was trying to remember what the consensus achieved was.
Yeah, I don't.
By the way, I can assign vote tokens rather than emails. So if there's any issue with delay, I could just have the tokens ready. You guys sign into the Opa Vote site with your token and immediately vote.
And if I could make a suggestion, we'll make the nominating speeches basically the first order of business beyond the reports or the basic stuff up front. And that way, if there's a problem, we have time to resolve it. And hopefully by the close of the meeting, we'll be able to announce the results.
Yeah, if that's the way the body wants to do it. Otherwise, I typed up something in chat if somebody wants to move that as well.
Mr. Chair and Madam Secretary, can I make a suggestion on something?
Sure, go ahead, Mr. Brown.
For the sake of your record being clear for precedent setting purposes, when the body overruled your ruling that you had become chair, and you announced that the ruling of the chair had been overturned, that actually should be followed by a statement that, quote, the vacancy is in the office of chair, not vice chair. And I would ask for the body's permission, if there's no objection, that the minutes reflect that your ruling was that the result of the appeal was the ruling of the chair has been overturned and the vacancy is in the office of chair, not vice chair.
And I apologize if I didn't say that. I know I meant to. So yeah, if as long as there's no objection, when we get back, we're time here. Ms. Harless, are you back?
Yes, I'm back, and that's the way I understood it. That's how I was going to note it.
Correct. Okay. Yeah, I just think it should be in the minutes so it's perfectly clear for precedent purposes.
Right.
When I produce the draft minutes, Mr. Brown, feel free to send me any suggestions. And that always is the case, by the way. I would love your suggestion on any of my minutes.
Well, we are running behind even for Libertarian time at this point. So let's.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Ms. Harless.
Since people have had time to workshop, please send the secretary your language.
Oh, that would be wonderful if somebody has something typed up that they could forward to the secretary. Does that exist yet or no?
I typed something, but I don't know if it's what the body wants to move forward with. It is in the chat.
All right.
I'd rather get the voting done during the meeting. Try.
All right. With the body's indulgence, we'll just wait to call back to order here for a minute while.
Yeah. If we're waiting to call back to order. So my reason for not wanting to do it immediately during the meeting is that maybe some of us want to think about it for a little bit after hearing their speeches rather than immediately vote after they stop talking. And by maybe, I mean, I literally do want to wait a little bit and let it marinate, in my head about who I want to actually vote for. Instead of just immediately jumping into a vote, I feel like that's going to force us to pick somebody before they even talk.
I get where you're at with that. I think the problem is that we're going to have to take some sort of action.
Well, the open vote ballot could be started. I'm just saying don't close it until, you can vote whenever you want. You want to vote while they're talking? Fine, whatever. But
right.
I just, I think 12 Mountain Time Monday is, that's going to be like an extra 12 hours. I mean, if we're to the point where we don't want to even wait the extra 12 hours, that's fine. But that's just my suggestion personally.
My only thought on it is that the new chair, whoever it becomes, may want to say some words. And that was kind of my thought on it. Just typically when somebody becomes the chair, they get to say like, hey, I'm so glad to be here and we're going to do awesome stuff and, that type of stuff. So
I'm with Dustin. No, I want some time to think about it.
Okay. Well, I mean, and maybe
Well, we will have 3 days between the close of the nomination and the meeting.
That's not after hearing them though.
Right.
Well, we can talk to them during that time.
I get a
But that's just
feeling.
for reaching out.
Speakers, then, if we're going to
I
talk.
get a
You
feeling.
don't have to have speakers. They can choose.
Yeah.
Some of them might
Right.
choose not to. Either way.
I
Go
get
ahead,
a feeling
Rich.
we're going to be hearing from all of them after nominations are closed.
Right.
I understand where Mr. Nana and Ms. Harless are coming from, but I have a feeling before we get to that meeting on the 11th, we're going to know everything about these people that we need to know.
Then I would move that we don't put, then I'm going to oppose anything in the motion that grants them speech time then, if that's the case, and if that's the feeling of the body, which is fine with me because that saves me time.
No, I disagree with that. I think we should give them some time at the meeting. It doesn't have to be 10, 15 minutes a piece. It can be a couple of minutes, almost like a final closing. They're going to have, nominees will have all kinds of options between Wednesday and Sunday, or whatever day it starts. Social media, Twitter, emails, phone calls, they have plenty of time to make their case. They should have a right to speak at the meeting, possibly for a couple of minutes, to make some final arguments.
Right.
But I don't see where I don't see where I'm going to need an additional 12 hours to make a decision. That's all I'm saying.
So very quickly here, Mr. Hagan, have we successfully delayed long enough to get something in writing to the secretary?
Okay, put up something into the chat.
Just to make a point here, clarification, the LNC meeting that was scheduled for the 11th is actually set for, it was an evening meeting for 7 p.m., which is what that was what we were doing with our first.
7 p.m. which time zone?
Probably
Eastern.
Probably
yeah,
Eastern.
Usually Eastern. Although if it's on my calendar as 7 to 9, that's probably 8.
That's what I asked.
Yeah, it's 8 Eastern. That was what we were doing with our first Sunday of the month meetings. And
let me check the agenda. Why did I do that? I made it so specific. It was so dumb. Okay. Right now I have it. I made it specific that says LNC meeting scheduled for 9/4 to 9/5. So when we get back to order here, we've got a motion in chat. Ms. Harless, were you able to capture that from the chat?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, so let's come back to order. Let's finish this item of business, and then we'll see what we need to do about that meeting immediately after, because I agree that I don't want to be on a meeting till midnight pretty much ever again. So yeah, let's come back to order. I think everyone has definitely had ample time to return.
Mr. Chair, may I make a point? It's Mr. Brown.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Brown.
Just want to point out, if you do the voting by open vote after the meeting adjourns, you should provide for some means for someone, either the chair or the secretary, to officially declare the result. You might have your normal procedure of doing that, but normally voting results have to be declared in a meeting. And if the meeting adjourns first, that's not possible. So I would just suggest maybe a provision that lets the chair or secretary declare the results.
Right.
And Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Harless.
what our custom has been, because the secretary can't declare results, is I send you the all the data from OPA vote, and we make sure we both understand it. And then in the past, our former chair has announced the results on the email list. That's how we've handled this.
Okay. I'm amenable to that if that's amenable to this body.
And I would ask everyone, there's a way for everyone to get what they want. I know some people don't need extra time, some people do. And I think a little consideration of everyone's differing styles could go a long way.
All right, well, let's do this. Let's call ourselves back to order. It is 1:38 p.m. Eastern time. It is definitely Libertarian time on that return time, but that's okay. Mr. Hagan, you were up next, and I believe you have prepared a motion that has been sent to the secretary via the chat. Would you mind reading the motion?
Correct. I move to amend the motion so it will read, nominations for chair will be open for 10 days via the business list. Speeches by nominees will be given at the July 11th meeting, with voting to follow by open vote with IRB. I read, is that clear that the voting is during the meeting?
Can we do a little friendly amendment and say IRB general?
General, with general IRB? Yes.
Point of information,
Yes, Ms. Adams?
nominations will be open for a certain time and accepted from whom?
Okay. According to our rules, only LNC, the LNC is the body that can appoint. So that is the question. We talked about this.
I realize we talked about it, but I
We didn't get an
recall
answer.
a resolution, and I would like to have one.
I agree. All right. Ms. Adams, right now it is not specified. So by default, I would rule that it is the members eligible to vote are the members eligible to nominate. And so it would work just like a vote. So for instance, if you made a nomination and then Ms. Bilyeu made a nomination, Ms. Bilyeu's nomination would override yours, just like a vote. I think that's probably the right way to do that, given our framework. That said, you know, we've got an amendment on the table. It has not been seconded yet.
Currently no elimination.
And that hasn't been specified, but there could be further amendments, you know, depending on up or down on this. This is a motion to amend by substitution, I believe, is the right way to put this. And once we're dispensed with this business, we can readdress the concern about who is permitted to vote. Does that make sense?
I mean, I guess.
Okay. All right, so a motion has been made. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second.
Okay, there's a second. All right, do we need, all right, in the queue, if you want to speak to this, okay, let me write down the names I have in the queue right now. This is Bowen, Adams, Harlotz, Bilyeu, and Nana. And when I get to you, if you wanted to go back to the main motion and not on the amendment, just let me know. Mr. Bowen, you are up first, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Trying to simplify this, we always seem to overcomplicate everything. I'm actually in support of this motion. I think a couple of things need to be added. I'm not making amendments at this point, but I just, in arguing for the motion, I just see a couple things missing. Number one, how many nominations are each member of the LNC allowed to make? And number two, are alternates allowed to nominate? That's the first thing I think that should be cleared up and added to this. The second thing is, actually, that's about it. I have no problem with closing nominations in 10 days, speeches by the nominees at the 11th meeting. The other thing that should probably be in this motion, because there is some question as to how long the OPA vote would be open. I personally would like to see the OPA vote close before the meeting does, so we can install the new chair at that meeting. But if others feel the need for extra time within reason, I would have no problem with that. But those are the things I see that we need to add to this motion to make it simple, direct, and everybody understands what's going on. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Ms. Adams.
Yeah, I agree with everything Mr. Bowen just said. I fully support this motion with the additions that Mr. Bowen brought up. Without the additions that Mr. Bowen brought up, I think that the motion is incomplete and is going to turn into another rabbit hole in another situation where things aren't going to get done the way that they maybe should get done. And they certainly aren't going to get done in a timely, non-controversial way. So I would urge everyone to vote it down as it stands and vote to support it with the amendments that Mr. Bowen suggested.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Adams. Ms. Harless.
Excuse me. You can skip me. I'll put my hand back up again if I want to say.
Okay. Ms. Bilyeu.
Yeah, I'm not ready.
All right. Mr. Nana.
I'm for the original motion, but also for this. So if you want to put me on that list. I think that even if you don't agree with this amendment, the easiest way to do that is to pass this one and then amend what we've passed. So I'm going to support this motion, even though I don't totally agree with it, and then we can hash the rest out later.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Nana. Next, I have Mr. Hagan and Mr. Phillips. Mr. Hagan?
Okay, I'll move to amend and add after or between the two sentences, add a sentence that say regional alternates may make nominations.
What?
Okay. Alternates may make nominations.
Can you amend the motion that you've already amended yourself? This is the same question we had earlier. So
If there's no objection, he can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Go ahead, Mr. Hagan. I think you said two things you were adding. Alternates may make nominations, and then what was the other thing?
I wonder if it should be a separate vote or I'll let someone move to divide if they don't like this. Then at the end, voting to follow by open vote with IRB, with voting to conclude before the end of the meeting.
Meeting. Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Bowen.
I'm sorry. The other issue that I had brought up, I just wanted to make sure the body is aware, is the number of nominations being added to that. So Mr. Hagan, if you'd like to amend, I would have no objection.
Sure. I'll also add in after the sentence concerning the alternates, that members may nominate more than one nominee.
They may or may not nominate more than one.
May.
Then what's the point of the alter?
yeah, I don't understand the alteration if it's not the limit.
Yeah, that is actually a good point. So unless you're trying to limit the number of people, if I can, unless you're trying to limit the number of people, that sentence would be just extra.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's unlimited.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Bowen.
I'm not sure, maybe I didn't explain myself correctly. I am in favor of LNC board members nominating more than one person. That's where I was getting at. Obviously, that's up for debate.
Right. So, all right. If I may make a suggestion, we can do this one of a couple different ways. Let's do this with if we can do this as Mr. Hagan had proposed, the amendment that alternates may make nominations, and that following the last sentence about IRB, with the ballots to close or the election to close before the end of the meeting. If we can get that amendment dispensed with, get back at least into the first level of amendment, if not maybe back to the main motion, and then we can have the discussion about how many people. Is that okay with everybody? Just
Chair, there's a point of information.
Okay.
Ms. Bill, you put a suggested amendment in chat, and I think it would be very good and something that should be supported.
I think she read my mind, and since mine has not been seconded yet, is that correct?
I believe you are correct.
I think what Ms. Milieu typed in was what I was about to amend it to say.
I am so confused where we're at right now.
All right, Mr. Chair.
Is there a way we could just hit reset and because there's amendments flying all over the place. They're out of order because other people aren't getting to do it. They're completely unrelated.
I would agree with the secretary. I think you got to start going down the list of hands.
I understand, and I'm trying to do that. I was on Mr. Hagan, and he was making this amendment, and then it got out of hand because there were friendlies being thrown at it, which is the difference between being a committee of the whole and being here. So I'm gonna hold this a little tighter now because we voted to go out of committee of the whole. So Mr. Hagan was making an amendment. He was working on the wording, and now has suggested that the wording that Ms. Bilyeu has put into the chat, which currently on my screen anyway is about 7 messages back or so. It begins with, from Ms. Bilyeu, that says, suggested amendment, nominations for chair will be open for 10 days via the business list. LNC members and alternates may submit 1 nomination each. Speeches by nominees may be given during the July 11th meeting, with voting to follow by OPA vote using IRV. Voting will close before the end of the meeting.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ms. Harlos, sorry.
I'm just wondering if the body can agree that we're not in multiple levels of amendment right now, and just pretend like this is the motion that came out of Committee of the Whole, because otherwise it's incorrect. It's not an amendment, it's a substitution. You can't do a substitution as a second level amendment. We're in a mess right now. Can we just please hit reset?
All right, let me do.
This is meant to be the clarifying the language as a suggestion to help Mr. Hagan with his.
Yep. All right. Let's do this. Just for the sake of cleanliness, what has been proposed so far before Mr. Hagan brought amendments essentially was that the nominations 10 days for business, the speeches at the July 11th meeting, and that voting would be by general IRV. And I believe that that's going to have majority support to become the main motion. And then there's obviously an intent and desire to have more added to this or changed. But I agree with Ms. Harlos. Roberts gets a lot easier if we avoid the multiple layers of amendments. And if it's amenable to, if the body is cool with this, I would really like to just stick to only 1 layer of amendment at a time, because things get weird in that second layer of amendment.
Well, and it was just out of order what he had done. I don't care about second levels of amendments, but.
Well, so what he was really trying to do was just add a couple of sentences. What he wrote was the entire thing as amended, if it passed. And so that, or what Ms. Bilyeu wrote. So that was why it was confusing, because it's not really a substitution. It's that she put the whole thing together.
No, it's a substitution because he made changes in totally different subject matters and totally different areas of the motion. That's not an amendment. It's
all right.
Point of inquiry.
So, point of inquiry, Mr. Bowen.
I feel responsible for all this, so I'm going to ask, is it in order for Mr. Hagan to reconsider and rescind his motion, and then have Ms. Bilyeu put her motion into discussion? I'm just asking.
It's technically not in order. It could be done without objection, but it could also be just as easy if we just get out of this amendment, get back to the main motion. And then now that we have some wording that is proposed, if somebody wants to move that, they can move that as amend by substitution at that point.
Point of order.
Yes. Yes.
It is my understanding that Mr. Hagan's amendment had not yet been seconded.
That is correct. We are
the language that I put in the chat was the language that I believed he was putting in there. His was a substitution because it did amend multiple parts of the original.
Okay.
What
this
I
is also a
substitution. Not meant to replace his. It was meant to pull in all the pieces that he was trying to bring in on the fly.
All right. So untangling this, Ms. Harlos, follow me here and see if I've got this wrong. We came out of the Committee of the Whole. We returned to the main motion. Mr. Hagan made a motion to amend the main motion. And it sounds like, did anybody second his amendment?
Yes. There were multiple seconds. I mean, without going back to the recording.
Seconded it. Yes, I seconded it. And then we started to try to change it after it was seconded. That's where this issue is arising.
Okay. So let's do this. Let's dispense with the amendment and get back to the main. And then obviously there is a desire to add or amend further, and we can discuss it at that time. As long as no one objects to the nomination being 10 days, speeches July 11th, and the voting is going to be by general IRV, right? Those were the 3 things that were outlined in the amendment that has been proposed. Then it won't be out of order to reconsider, or it would be out of order to, God.
It can be amended further, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Because we're just doing a substitute at that point, so we're good.
correct. So how about we just vote and get out of this mess and get back to the main motion, and then we figure it out from there.
Please.
Everybody? Okay. So Mr. Hagan, since you made the amendment, I don't even know what the call queue is anymore. Let's see here. I'm trying to find what it is. All right, it was Hagan, then Phillips was next.
Yes, and I was just going to say what you just said, and I was going to call the question.
Perfect. That's what I was hoping, the words I would hear from your mouth. There's been Mr. Phillips calls the question. Is there a second to calling the question?
Second.
All right, there's a second. Is there objection to calling the question? I am not hearing any objection. Awesome. We're back to the main motion as amended, which I believe now reads that nominations will be taken for 10 days.
Mr. Chair, technically we have to vote on the question, don't we?
Oh, God, yes. I'm sorry. No, oh, yeah. God, yes. Sorry, I'm getting all flummoxed. We called the question, but we haven't voted on the question itself. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. All right. I'm going to take a drink of water for just a moment. Okay. So we called the question on the amendment. What we need to do now is actually vote on the amendment. Debate is closed. Now we're voting on the amendment. The amendment is an amendment by substitution, I believe. And Madam Secretary, do you have the wording of that amendment handy? Or okay, perfect. Would you mind reading it, please?
Nominations for chair, you're talking about, okay, yeah, nominations for chair will be open for 10 days via the business list. Speeches by nominees will be given at the July 11th meeting, with voting to follow by open vote with general IRB.
Perfect. Okay. So voting yes, we'll make that the main motion. Voting no, we would return to what we had before, which was not as defined.
Is there any objection?
Yes. So that is a very good question. Is there objection to adopting this amendment, making it the main motion? I am not hearing any objection. So now we are back to the main motion as amended, which Ms. Harlos just read. And okay, cue for after the vote. I think, Mr. Harris, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Ms. Harlos is then up next. Is that correct, Mr. Harris?
You have Ms. Harlos at the top of the list, yes.
Okay, perfect. So the list I have is Harlos, Nana, Bilyeu, and Bowen. Ms. Harlos, you have the floor.
I would like to move to amend to have with voting to conclude by noon Mountain Time on Monday.
To conclude by noon Mountain Time on, if you don't mind, I'm going to put July 12th.
That's fine.
Is that okay? Just. Okay. So voting to conclude by noon Mountain Time on July 12th. Is there a second to that proposal?
Second.
Ms. Ebke. Ms. Ebke seconds. Okay. Ms. Harlos, would you like to speak to your amendment?
Yes. I would really hope that we all just try to find a way to give everybody what they want. This isn't terribly too much time, and it accommodates the people who would like a little bit more time. And I just think it's fair. Let's all try to come to something that might not be what we personally would think is ideal, but is a consensus.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. So in the queue, we had Nana, Bilyeu, Bowen. Mr. Nana, do you want to speak to this amendment, or do you want to?
I had my hand up for the main motion, but I would also like to speak to the amendment. If it ever
Okay.
lets me, if I ever get to talk on the main, we'll see.
That's fine. Go ahead, Mr. Nano.
Okay, I'm going to echo a lot of what Ms. Harlow said. I think this is a good compromise. I don't necessarily agree with the 10 days, so I'm already compromising. I would ask that the body be respectful of those of us that would like a little bit more time and compromise on this side of it too.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Nana. Ms. Billieu, do you want to speak on this amendment or do you want to speak on the main?
No, not on the amendment.
Not on the amendment. Okay. All right. Mr. Bowen, the amendment or the main?
I yield on the amendment, although speak on the main.
All right. Mr. Harris, is there anyone else in the list who would like to speak on the amendment?
Not that I see.
All right. Well, since there's no one else in the queue to speak on this amendment, we will take this to a vote. Again, the item is to amend the main motion to add to the end, voting to conclude by noon Mountain Time on July 12th. Is there objection to adding this language to the?
Yes.
Okay, there is objection. All right. With objection, then we will take a roll call vote. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Okay, give me 1 second because I've been having coughing fits. 1 moment.
No problem.
Ms. Billieu,
Abstain.
Mr. Bowen,
Yes.
Ms. Epke,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
I will be voting yes. Mr. Hewitt,
Yes.
Ms. Hogarth,
No.
Mr. Longstreth,
Pass.
Mr. Nana,
Yes.
Mr. Kayla. I can't hear you.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Roudset,
Yes.
Ms. Sarwar,
Yes.
Mr. Smith, Mr. Smith, I'll come back to you. Mr. Lucchini.
Yes, could you not hear me?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Lucchini. Mr. Lucchini. I'll come back to you, Mr. Longstreth.
Yes.
Mr. Lucchini. Okay, Mr. Chair, without the vote of Mr. Lucchini, it's 12 to 1 to 1.
I will not vote. So that makes it
12 to 1 to 2.
12 to 1 to 2. All right. By a vote of 12 to 1 to 2, the amendment passes. And we are now back to the main motion as amended. And just for the sake of clarity, because there's been a little bit of confusion, Madam Secretary, can you read the proposal now as amended so we're all level set on what we're debating?
Yes, it is. Nominations for chair will be open for 10 days via the business list. Speeches by nominees will be given at the July 11th meeting with voting to follow by open vote with general IRB with voting to conclude by noon Mountain Time on July 12th.
Okay, perfect. And then the first person I have in the queue, I have Nana, Billieu, and Bowen carried over from before. And let me double check my signal to see. Oh, actually, it looks like I have Harlos actually first. I'm sorry. Well, no, Harlos is from before. I know that. Yeah.
I have to be first at this point. I have. There's no other way.
Yes. So, Mr. Nana, you are up.
All right. So I have an amendment to offer. I'm going to try to thread the needle here and do the compromise thing. Some people want to limit it to one. Some people don't want it to be limited. So I would move that the motion be amended to read: nominations for chair will be open for 10 days via the business list. LNC members and alternates may submit 2 nominations each. Speeches by nominees may be given during the July 11th meeting, with voting to follow by open vote using general IRV. Voting will end at noon Mountain Time on July 12th.
Clarification, did you mean up to 2?
Yes, up to 2. 2 is maximum.
Yeah.
Second.
All right, so there's been a motion and a second, a motion to amend in a second. So I'm just trying to make sure we have that. Madam Secretary, did you catch all of that language?
Well, from what I heard,
I
correct
did.
me if I'm wrong, it was just one sentence that was added.
That is correct. I just want to make sure I want to make sure I heard it, which was LNC members and alternates may submit up to 2, and then I
Nominees.
missed nominees. So we have there's a motion to amend to add that as the second sentence. And it has been seconded. And it says here, the only hands remaining are Bill and Bowen. All right. Does anybody want to, Miss Bill, did you want to speak to this amendment or back on the main?
I was trying to keep track of what Mr. Nana was saying in the chat, so I don't know if he wants to look at what I just put in there and see.
You
if that
got
is-
it. Well, what you typed up is exactly what I was trying to do, but
Okay.
I kept it general before IRV. I didn't want to. That's the only thing you missed, which was the
Oh,
carryover
general,
first.
okay.
But
So I just want to make sure that the secretary sees that. So just add the word general before IRV.
Yeah, that's exactly what I have.
Okay. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. So Miss Bill, did you want to speak to the, did you want to speak to this? Okay. Okay.
I have nothing else.
All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Bowen, did you want to speak to this amendment or to the main?
I'll speak to this amendment. Just
Okay,
wanted
go
to
ahead.
say I will support Mr. Nana's amendment. I think it's a good compromise.
Okay.
We don't want that could be a potential of up to 46 people. I doubt it will be that, but it does limit, and I support it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I apologize, Mr. Nana, I should have given you the opportunity to speak in favor of your amendment. Do you have anything to add there? I'm sorry.
no, just that this is the best compromise I can think of, and I urge its passing.
All right. Does anybody else want to speak on this? I'm not hearing anything, and Mr. Harris isn't sending me any messages from afar. So with that, then we will move this to a vote. And I will try. Is there objection to this proposed amendment? Members and alternates may submit up to 2 nominees. I'm not hearing any objection. So without objection, that amendment passes. We are now back to the main motion. All right, I still have Bill and Bowen maybe in the list. I can't tell. Actually, I see Eric Rodstep's hand up too. I see that one.
The only hand currently raised.
Oh, okay, then great. Mr. Rodstep, you are recognized.
I call the question.
Okay, Mr. Rodstep calls the question. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Hagan seconds. All right, is there objection to calling the question? I'm hearing no objection. Hearing no objection, the discussion and debate is closed. We are now to the vote on the motion. I think we should probably just do this by roll call, just because it's substantive. I apologize. This is a big deal. It's the chair. So, Madam Secretary, let's just go ahead and do this real quick. Roll call.
Ms. Bilyeu?
Actually, I'm sorry. Actually, before you do that, just for the sake of everything, can you read the whole thing as amended one time, just to make sure everybody knows exactly what we're voting on, because it's a big deal.
Nominations for chair will be open for 10 days via the business list. LNC members and alternates may submit up to 2 nominees. Speeches by nominees will be given at the July 11th meeting, with voting to follow by OPA vote, with general IRB with voting to conclude by noon Mountain Time on July 12th.
Thank you very much, Ms. Harlos. All right, now let's do the roll call. Sorry.
It's okay. Ms. Bilyeu?
Yes.
Mr. Bowen?
Yes.
Ms. Epke?
Yes.
Oh, 1 second. I'm sorry. I messed up my form here. 1 second. I'll get. Okay. Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Hewitt?
Yes.
Ms. Hogarth?
Yes.
Mr. Longstreth?
Yes.
Mr. Nana?
Yes.
Mr. Nikela? Was that a yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Radza?
Yes.
Ms. Sarwark?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Lucchini?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, it's 15-0-0.
I will not vote. That makes
Mr.
me
Chair.
tally. Yes.
I have a motion.
Okay. Let me read the final on this, and then I'll get right to you. Ms. Harless, by my not vote, does that count as an abstention?
Yeah, it will be 15-0-1.
All right. By 15-0-1, the LNC adopts the mechanism by which we're going to get our next chair. All right. And I think that was with Mr. Longstreth.
Yes, due to various time constraints expressed by various members on this committee, I would move that we take the remaining agenda items and sort out what we can by email, and anything that is not able to be sorted out by email be discussed at our next scheduled meeting on July 11th.
Okay. That is a motion that has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Can I get a point of information, sir?
Go ahead.
What are the remaining items on the agenda?
Our LNC meeting scheduled for the 4th and 5th, we cannot do in Reno because there's no space at the hotel. We had the LPNH investigation committee. We have vacancies on LNC subcommittees, a question about what to do with the chair's advisories committees, and public comment. That is the remainder of the agenda.
I withdraw my second. I forgot something that's on there that we need to deal with.
Okay. So is there a can you withdraw a second? I guess I'll let it go. Anyway, okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Ms. Ebke seconds. All right. Let's see here. So it's been made and seconded. Is this a motion to table or wait? Mr. Longstreth, I sincerely apologize. What was the exact type of motion this was? I'm
going to look to your expertise and guidance on that, Mr. Chair. The intention is to kick as many items to email as possible. And by default, if something cannot be done by email, it is automatically on our agenda in 2 weeks. That is the intent. So however that needs to be wordsmithed or technically made correct, I leave to your expertise.
Okay. Mr. Brown, I'm going to ask you what's the best way to do this. We're not trying to kill this business. We're trying to move it to a later meeting.
I have the wording, Mr. Chair.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Harlow.
A motion to defer remaining agenda items to email vote where possible, with any additional remaining items postponed until the July 11th meeting.
Perfect. That sounds exactly like what I heard Mr. Longstreth say.
That's what I said. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
That is exactly what I heard. All right, and then Ms. Ebke seconded it. The question is whether this is debatable, and that's what I was trying to figure out next.
Or amendable.
Or amendable.
It is. It's a form of a motion to postpone, definitely.
Okay.
Offer an amendment to resolve the meeting issue.
People had their hands up, so I'm not sure what the cue is.
All right, that's what I'm going to try to figure out myself. So hold on one second.
Apologies.
That's all right. Don't worry. I have the same problem. So it looks like Miss
for objections yet.
No, I have not. So is there, actually, I think somebody already did, but is there objection to this motion?
Yes.
Yeah, thought so. All right. And then Ms. Harlos, then Ms. Bilyeu, and then Mr. Buffman in that order. Ms. Harlos?
I would like to just vote this down and defer things individually rather than as a class. And I'm not even sure we can do that, but I'm not even going to get into that. We need to deal with the issue of the committee, whether this needs to be outside, inside. I didn't push my email for asking for sponsors because I figured we were going to talk about it today, which is much more productive. But it seems there is a lot of interest. And so I would like to get to our, agenda item of my motion to reconsider that, that committee.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Then we also have Ms. Bilyeu next.
Yes, I am amenable to pushing everything that's on the agenda for today to the list or to the next meeting, with one exception, and that is the selection of the location for the next LNC meeting, for the September meeting. I feel like we try to come up with locations and sort this out on the email list, and we have not been successful at that to any large degree. So I would like to hash out the September meeting today. With everything else, I'm fine with pushing.
Okay. All right. Mr. Buffman.
Yeah, I want to speak against this, and I want to agree with Ms. Harlos. The investigation committee needs to be resolved. It's been 2 weeks, over 2 weeks. And the more time we drag our feet, the more time we won't get answers, real answers. So I believe we need to square this away ASAP.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Buffman. And I'm not seeing Mr. Harris. Is that the end of the queue?
Looks like Mr. Bowen has.
After Buffman, I have Bowen, Nana, and then Bilyeu.
I re-raised my hand.
Bowen, Nana, Bilyeu. All right. Mr. Bowen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I concur with Ms. Harlos and Mr. Buckman. I believe that the investigation committee is something that needs to be handled immediately. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Nana?
I'm actually going to agree with both people, both sides of this. I think we need to hatch out both the meeting location and the investigation committee if we're going to seek to revisit that.
Okay. Ms. Bilyeu.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. Don't we have ballots in our inboxes already to select the investigative committee members?
We do. This was put on the agenda because there was some talk about trying to reconsider how it was constituted. The ballots are there. I had asked the secretary specifically not to close that so that we're not exposing or knowing the answers per se until this committee figured out what we were doing with that committee. Because I think that's only fair, and I don't want who gets put on the committee to cloud somebody's judgment on what the right way to go is. So that is why, as far as I'm aware, those ballots are still open. But that is why that was on the agenda today.
They are indeed still open, Mr. Chair.
Okay, perfect. So,
Mr. Chair, I have my hand up.
Oh, okay. I'll call Mr. Phillips. And if there's anyone else in the queue, Mr. Harris, if you could help me. But go ahead, Mr. Phillips.
I'm just, not being totally parliamentary wise, like our secretary and Mr. Brown. Would not a motion to divide be in order right now, where we do, because I would move to divide the subject of our next meeting and the subject of the investigation committee.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be in order. In fact, I tend to believe a motion to just postpone everything is actually out of order.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, Mr. Brown. You can't do that.
I thought about that.
Do it individually because, right.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I get it.
In which case I withdraw my motion if it is out of order, if the original motion's out of order.
I mean, I was going to let it roll, but yeah, okay. Since
I'm
there's going to be
raise
objection
that point
to
of order that
Yeah.
is out of order. It's
Yep.
just
All right.
easier.
And since the point of order has been raised, I will rule that it is out of order because you can't kick it all together. So I'm going to go back to Mr. Longstreth since he had attempted to make this motion. Would you like to perhaps kick one of these items and then maybe somebody else get another one and kind of go from there?
Whatever is next on the agenda, let's start there. So I'm not sure what agenda is exactly in front of us. Whatever's next.
Well, Mr. Longstreth, the next item on the agenda is the LNC meeting scheduled for the 4th and 5th of September. I mean,
do we have enough information to have a reasonable discussion on that right now, Mr. Chair? You would know better than me. What's your guidance?
I do not. What I was going to suggest to this committee is that this committee pick 2 or 3 cities, give them to Robert Kraus, and let Robert find us a place to go. That's what I was going to, suggest, is because Robert's the master at finding the good place to go. That's cheap and relatively good. So that was my thought.
And I think we can do that by email. So I'm going to go ahead and yes, let's do that one first. We can figure that out by.
Perfect. All right. Then there's been a motion to move the question of the LNC meeting scheduled for the 4th and 5th of September to email. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. That's been seconded by Ms. Harlos. Is there, it is debatable. So Mr. Longstreth, do you want to talk to it, or you got it covered?
I feel like it's self-explanatory. It's a pretty obvious up or down vote. Let's just get through it.
All right. Perfect. Anyone? Okay. We have Phillips and Sarwark in the queue is what I'm being told. Wait. Yeah. Phillips and Sarwark. Mr. Phillips?
I do object to this. I think that this is something that we need to handle ASAP. And by the time we get it kicked to Mr. Krause and then back to the email list and then have the email list vote, we've put off a substantial amount of time. So I am opposed to kicking this agenda item.
All right. Ms. Sarwark?
I also object and would like the committee to reconsider the date to move it to the next weekend because of the price of airline tickets. That is Labor Day weekend. I unfortunately left the LNC meeting early the last time, but that should have been something that was spoken to right away. Nobody's going to get a cheap airline ticket on Labor Day weekend, nor will we get a good hotel rate anywhere on Labor Day weekend.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Sarwark. Let's see here. After Sarwark, okay, Phil, you put her hand down. Cool. Okay. Or is it Ms. Bill? You have your hand up.
It is back up.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to disagree on changing the date. We've already set that date. It was already in motion. We've done this on major holidays before multiple times. We do conventions on major holidays. We've done LNC meetings on major holidays. So I don't see that being an issue. So I just want to settle this on that date and pick a location.
All right. Next is Ms. Harlos.
I would like to make a substitute motion to refer this to the executive committee to resolve within the week.
Oh, there's going to be a opposition, not from me.
Okay, let me do this. Is there a second to kicking it to the executive committee?
I'll second.
All right, Mr. Bowen seconds. I believe this is debatable. Ms. Harlos, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yep, we're not going to do this with 17 people here. We see everything's already on the table. I think the executive committee can meet quickly, and if we give them a time frame of a week to get a date and location set, I think that's the most expeditious way to handle it. And I'm sure all the executive committee members will take everyone's input on email into consideration, but we're going to be here 2 hours doing this.
All right.
Object, Mr. Chairman.
What's that?
Object.
You object to kicking it to the EC?
Correct.
Okay, I think Mr. Nana has his hand up to speak against. Mr. Nana?
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about kicking it, not kicking it, what dates we want to do, but let's just get it done. I think we can get it done. I don't think it'll take 2 hours. I have some suggestions for locations already ready to go if we ever get to that point.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Nana. Is there anyone else who wants to speak on this? I don't see any hands up on my phone, but that sometimes lies. Okay. I'm going to say there's no more discussion on this. At this point, okay. We were in the motion to divide, and then we were in, Ms. Harlos, what was your motion? You're supposed to move it to the executive committee, right?
Yeah, it was to move to the executive committee.
Yeah, move the decision to the executive committee. All right. There's obviously objection to moving it to the executive committee, so let's just do the vote on this. Ms. Harlos, call the roll.
Ms. Bilyeu?
No.
Mr. Bowen?
Yes.
Ms. Epke?
Yes.
Mr. Hagan?
No.
I will vote yes. Mr. Hewitt?
No.
Ms. Hogarth?
No.
Mr. Longstreth,
Yes.
Mr. Nana,
No.
Mr. Nikela,
No.
Mr. Phillips,
No.
Mr. Ratsip,
Abstain.
Ms. Sarwark,
I apologize, my internet went out. Are we voting on kicking it to the executive committee?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'll vote no. Thank you.
Mr. Smith, Mr. Smith, I'll come back to you. Mr. Lucchini,
No.
Mr. Smith. Okay, without Mr. Smith voting, Mr. Chair, it's 4 yes, 9 no, 1 express abstention.
Okay, and I will not vote.
Okay, that will be 4-9-2.
All right, the motion to move to the decision to the executive committee fails by a vote of 4-9 to 2. And we are back to the question on the motion to divide and
Well, to postpone to
to
July
postpone.
11th.
Yeah, I had the wrong thing written down here. Sorry.
I mean, email, excuse me, not July 11th. email.
Postpone to email. Yep. Back on that question. Is there any further discussion or debate? Looks like there's a queue forming up. Okay, Phillips and then Nana. Mr. Phillips, you're up.
I'm sorry, my hand was up to be after this was settled.
Okay, after this question of the postponing to email.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. Mr. Nana?
Mine's the same as Phillips once we get back to the motion.
We are, I'm sorry.
So-
We are back to the postpone to email on the.
Okay, well, I oppose postponing the email, but my hand's going to be up for other things.
Okay. All right. Is there any further discussion on postponing the discussion about where to hold the LNC meeting to email? Not seeing any further discussion. Nobody's hitting me. Okay, then we're going to vote on this. I already know this is divided, so let's just do the roll and be done with it. Ms. Harlow,
Can you restate? Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Yes. This is a motion to move the LNC meeting scheduled for 9/4/95 agenda item to postpone it to email.
Thank you.
Are you ready for me to take the roll, Mr. Chair?
I believe so.
Ms. Bilyeu,
No.
Mr. Bowen,
Yes.
Ms. Epke,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan.
No.
I will vote yes. Mr. Hewitt,
Excuse me, repeat that, please. I'm sorry.
I'm asking for your vote.
Yes, again, can you repeat what the vote's on? I'm sorry.
It is to postpone the discussion of the next LNC meeting of September 4th through 5th to email.
Yes.
Ms. Hogarth,
No.
Mr. Longstreth, Mr. Longstreth. I'll come back to you. Mr. Nana,
No.
Mr. Nikela, Mr. Nikela,
Yes.
Mr. Phillips,
No.
Mr. Ratsep,
Yes.
Ms. Sarwark,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Lucchini, Mr. Lucchini. I'll come back to you. Mr. Longstreth,
Yes.
Mr. Lucchini. Without Mr. Lucchini's vote, Mr. Chair, it is 9 yes, 5 no, no abstentions.
All right, chair will not vote.
So that is
Or I will not vote.
9-5-1.
9-5-1. Motion 9 to 5 to 1. The question of postponing the discussion of rescheduling the LNC meeting is moved to email. All right. Next on the agenda And I know, I think Mr. Phillips and Mr. Nana wanted to speak or do something once we got out of here.
My speaking was subject to the result of that vote. I no longer need to speak.
Okay, perfect. Mr. Nana, do you still need to speak?
So the next on the agenda, correct me if I'm wrong, is the investigative committee, right?
That is correct.
I have a motion that pertains to that.
Okay, well, we are there right now.
Okay.
LPNH Investigation Committee is the topic du jour.
Okay, having voted in the affirmative for that motion, I am now moving to reconsider that motion. I would like to change the investigative committee to an independent outside board or firm or whatever it ends up being, but not the current setup.
Second. But just FYI, you don't need to be on the affirmative side in a different meeting.
Mr. Chair, this actually, the motion to reconsider would be out of order at this time. It would need to be a motion to amend or rescind something previously adopted.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
So I apologize.
All right, so in this case, I think it's going to be an amend.
Correct.
A previous action.
If somebody could put the language that we did pass in the chat, I can put my amendment to that in the chat in response.
Oh, I emailed that to the list earlier today.
Give me a second. I'll have to navigate away from Zoom to get to that. Hold on.
All right.
I'm looking for it as well. I sent it this morning. Where the heck is it?
I believe I located it. It was, let's see. The LNC shall appoint 3 members to lead an ad hoc investigative committee, which shall provide, yeah, this is it.
Okay.
All right.
Are you going to send me your revised wording, Mr. Nana?
Yeah, it's going to take me a second because I didn't anticipate having to copy paste this from mail and then edit it on the fly. I can give it to you verbally, I suppose. I mean, this motion is huge. Holy crap.
I know. I need it. I need it in writing.
Yeah, give me a second. I will just hammer it out writing it to save us time if you want to. Give me a second here.
Mr. Chair, while he's hammering that out, I would consider this a motion with notice because it was on the agenda. So a majority vote is what would be required.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Brown. That is helpful.
And I can't enter it into the chat because it's too long. So.
Can you email it to me, please?
Oh my gosh. All right, let me do this verbally and then
okay.
No, I mean.
Point of information, Mr. Chair.
Point of information.
Thank you. Just so everybody knows, the email that Ms. Harlow sent is dated Saturday, June 26th at 6:34 p.m. It is headed with final wording of motion passed last week, if people are looking for it in email.
All right, so this is going to be the new wording. I'm going to try to change as little as possible. So it will now read, the LNC shall appoint an outside investigative committee, which shall provide an independent and thorough investigation into the events which led to the splitting of the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire affiliate. The Libertarian National Committee shall vote on the investigative committee immediately following the passage of this motion. And then the LNC member part would be moot. So it would strike from no LNC members all the way through the rest of that paragraph. Then it would read, the rest would read, the purpose of the committee will be to provide recommendations to the LNC, JC, and Bylaws Committee to resolve any repealed issues, as well as set forth a model of investigating internal matters. The committee shall form a timeline of events starting at the LP New Hampshire 2021 State Convention until present. determine the involvement of LNC members in LPNH leadership, interview pertinent members of both organizations, review any pertinent party-run or personal electronic communications of the parties involved, and set forth a model of investigating internal issue not covered by the Judicial Committee bylaws and policy manual. The investigative agency / committee shall be granted access to and review any party emails and communications. The LNC shall direct communications, the LNC shall direct Executive Director Tyler Harris to assist in the procurement process. During the course of the investigation, the investigative agency / committee may seek permission to access any LPNH assets they deem pertinent by the appropriate local affiliate officials. The investigative agency / committee shall report back to the LNC for a debriefing of the findings, recommendations, and final thoughts upon the investigation being determined complete by the committee. The committee shall disband upon its final report. Actually, you could probably strike the last sentence because we're not going to be disbanding an agency.
I need something in writing.
I understand. It's going to take me several minutes to copy paste this, and then
okay,
because I can't put it in the chat, unfortunately.
Can I, point of inquiry?
Point of inquiry.
Can I motion a 5-minute break so that Mr. Nana can get his thoughts together?
I was actually going to suggest that. I know this committee is anxious to get out of here, but this obviously is something that wants to consider today. I'm hoping that the rest of the agenda will be able to kick out, and then I will definitely stick around for the public comment portion. I know some others don't have time, but I can stick around for that. So
I'll do that in the car. So yeah.
Yeah. So long story short, if there's no objection, let's take a 5-minute break. Let's get the wording correct. And then what time is it? And I mean a real 5-minute break this time. So it is 2:35. And so at 2:40 and some change Eastern time, we will return. Is that okay with everyone? Is there objection? Okay, and Ms. Bilyeu, I do see your hand up. It looks like after Nana, I have Harlos, Bilyeu, and Hagen. We are recessed for 5 minutes, and I mean a real 5 minutes, which literally just turned over to 2:36. So we're 5 minutes from here, 2:41 on the dot. We're back. And Dustin, since we're out of the meeting, one thing I would note is that you're not, in this scenario, I don't think we're appointing a committee. You're hiring an outside agency.
I got you. I got you.
Pointing that out, that that's a little different. It's not.
I got you.
And Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just an FYI, at 3, I'm going to need to be given a few minutes to transition to the car.
That's no problem. And I know Mr. Rodsep needs to bounce at about that time too. So I'm really hoping we can get this piece done by 3, which will meet everybody's timelines. We'll kick the rest of this out to the next meeting. And then, because we don't have to worry about the committee stuff is important, but it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that when my ride gets here, I'm going to.
Understood. Makes sense. So. I hope Dustin's furiously hammering away on his phone.
Still typing. I think I'm almost done.
Okay. So while we're waiting, I'll note that chairing a committee of this size is a little different than committees I've chaired in the past. Most of them have been, I think the largest was 10 or 11 people.
I think I have the language now sent in the same, it is in the same thread that she originally sent the wording to us in.
Okay.
Susan then bumped very hopefully for us.
Nice. So Ms. Harlos, Mr. Nana says that you should have the amendment in your email.
I'm going to go look right now.
The proposed amendment.
I do have it, and I'd just like to ask the body, if for some reason my car connection doesn't work, I see Ms. Matson is here. If they would permit her to take over secretarial duties in my absence, if for some reason I do not reconnect.
Okay. We
If
can
she's
ask that when we
willing.
get back to business, but
I didn't ask her, but
I can't think of a better person if she accepts.
See what happens when you show up to a meeting, Alicia.
voluntold.
Voluntold.
That'll teach me.
So I left the word committee everywhere and just put agency / in front of it, just in case, just.
That's fine.
If we want to get rid of the word committee, that's fine. Actually, I missed one.
I see you missed a few. I'm taking care of that.
Thank
Perfect.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I missed a couple of them.
Got about a minute and a half until we come back, just as a warning to everybody.
And I actually did leave the no LNC members part because we wouldn't want to hire an agency that's, if anybody, I don't think anybody does, but just in case.
Well, damn it. I was just forming a company.
Right, exactly.
I'm waiting for my clock to tick over, and now give that's the 1 minute warning right there.
Okay, I'm going to send where I made your corrections, adding that in the same thread so that everyone has.
Yep, I appreciate it. And of course, I would like to speak to it when we get a chance.
That's it. That's time. All right. I hope everyone's back, because I wasn't kidding about the 5 minutes for real, for real. All right. If I can get my phone to stop falling down. Here we go. All right. Okay. So updating the queue after Nana. Okay. After Nana is Harlos, Bilyeu, Hagen, Buffman. Okay. And we are back in order. It is 41 past 2 Eastern time. And Mr. Nana has submitted his amendment to the secretary. The secretary has made a couple of technical corrections and mailed them back around to everyone. Everyone should have that. According to the queue, Mr. Nana has made this motion. He'll speak first in favor, and then afterwards we'll have Ms. Harlos, Ms. Bilyeu, Mr. Hagen, Mr. Buffman, assuming they want to speak on this. Mr. Nana, go.
All right, I'll keep it very brief. We've all had kind of some crosstalk since this decision was made that it might be better to hire somebody completely out of the organization because they would be completely unbiased. And while I don't want to spend money on this, I think this is the only way we're going to get a completely unbiased result from this committee / agency. It's not an indictment of anybody that was nominated / eligible. It is just that I think that it is impossible to not have a bias in this situation one way or the other, unless you literally will be seeing it for the first time as an agency being hired.
All
right. Thank you, Mr. Nana. Ms. Harlos.
Yeah, I concur. There's going to be biases, and I think with that it's not a judgment on anyone that's on the committee, but there's some obvious biases in there. And if our idea is to not splinter the party further, I could tell you, me personally, I think I would have problems accepting the report, and whether the LNC likes what I've done or not likes what I've done, I'm seeing somewhat of a thought leader on this particular issue. And I think it's very important that I be able to get behind it so that I can be the model for everyone to get behind it. And I can't get behind it the way it is now. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Harless. Ms. Billiou.
Yeah, a couple points. I think one is that I realize that what we want is something independent and unbiased, but we're going to wind up with something inconclusive either way. And I have a very hard time spending money on something like this because no entity that we hire or appoint is going to have any authority to compel any of the people involved in this to provide anything or talk about any of it. So I just want to point out that there's no guarantee here. There's no legal authority that any of these entities are going to have to compel anyone to speak or provide documentation. And so there's a chance that we're going to wind up in the same situation we're in now, where everybody is just telling the side of the story that makes them look the best. And I really don't know how that helps us get from where we are now to any better place. So I just want to point that out, that spending money on it is a big concern. And where are the funds going to come from, and why is the LNC responsible for it?
All right, thank you, Ms. Billiou. I have Mr. Hagan, Mr. Buffman, and then Mr. Rodsep. Mr. Hagan.
Yeah, one of my questions is who's going to be doing the actual hiring of the investigation committee? Will it be the chair or the executive director? And then assume that person will also have to work on the exact scope that the investigation agency, not committee, it's the exact scope that they be, especially as they dig in, find out more things, if things need to be expanded. So now we have one person who, what people are saying, could be biased instead of a committee of three that be kind of directing this agency. My main concern is, like Ms. Billiou's mentioned, is the cost. Where are we going to get the money from? Are we going to cut out a couple of the candidate training sessions, or are we going to give up ballot access for Alabama? Because I've heard some high estimates to be able to hire investigation committee for something like this, which is fairly open. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hagan. Mr. Buffman.
All right, just a couple of things. I'm going to agree with support reconsidering this. We've been dragging our feet for over 2 weeks. Sorry, I'm in the car with my son. We've been dragging our feet for like 2 weeks. And now I'm hearing people want to drop the issue. We forget that our chair resigned. 2 regional reps resigned. Staff resigned. All because of this. And to drop it, it is just absurd. Furthermore, I was part of the group that originally wrote the motion with Mr. Nicola.
Point of order. Are we really discussing dropping it? I didn't think that was.
No, I'm not discussing dropping it. I'm saying there's people who have brought it up, and I'm just trying to draw attention to the importance of this.
But that's not the motion that you're discussing.
I am discussing. I'm getting to it.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. You should be making rulings, not other committee members.
Mr. Chair, I have a point of order. Should his response not be directly to the motion proposed and not some hypothetical motion?
I think, and I'm hoping I'm hearing that Mr. Buffman is going to tie this. He's providing background to tie to a point that he's going to make on this actual motion. And I think that's where he's going, which is why I was allowing it.
You're 100% correct.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Buffman.
All right. So having realized all these issues, we need to step up and do the right thing, because that's not what we're doing right now. We need to bring in an independent committee, like what's been suggested, to attempt to resolve this. I mean, I know there are issues with compelling people to talk. I deal with that all the time in law enforcement. You can't force people to talk, and that's just the way it is. But if we don't move forward with this, I mean, what are our membership? We owe it to our membership to provide them with this. We've had we need to move forward with this, and we need to move forward with it now.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Buffman. I have Mr. Rodsep, then Mr. Nicola, Mr. Bowen, and Ms. Hogarth. Mr. Rodsep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I spoke last week when we voted that we needed an independent counsel. I think we need to set some sort of financial limit on how much that we're going to expend, because at this point, the healing has already begun, and we need to make sure that we keep this within a reasonable budget. Otherwise, this can become the white elephant of the room, and it will hinder operations on many things that we need to be spending money, but we definitely need to have this for some sort of answer so we can put this behind us and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ronson. Mr. Michaela.
Mr. Chair, I have questions. If we're going to go to an independent route, we need to know who's the company that's going to be investigating this. What is their past experience? Are they going to have to review all of our bylaws, our rules, our JC? Do they understand Roberts? How much is it going to cost? What's the duration going to be? So I have a lot of questions here. If we continue with what we have people who we've nominated as a board, who my understanding is we're already voting on them. Why do we believe there could be a bias? I put forward Suzanne Gilmore from Florida. I don't know if she's gonna be on the board or not. I don't know others put forward, but I know that I picked her specifically because I knew she would be extremely neutral and unbiased. So, we're going back to the drawing board based on what ifs. Not everybody is fractionalized. Not everybody's at each other's throats. There are people out there that want the best for the party, and we just need an investigation. The fact. So if we go this investigative route with the company, I have so many questions that we're going to have to confirm. We're going to need a limit, a budget. I don't know. I'm not in favor of this. I think we should just continue with what we have. Let's move forward. We have too many contingencies. We're breaking down the what ifs. We're moving past this already. The healing has begun, but we need to move forward. So I'm in favor of keeping things as is and just moving forward with the committee and going from there, because we might not like the results either way. It might be indifferent. I don't know, but we got to do something. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kayla. Mr. Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think everybody knows already that I'm in support of this motion. I've been pretty vocal about it and pretty public about it, but I will say it again for the record. An organization that investigates its own organization is not independent. It is self-policing. It will not have any effect. I understand everybody's concerns about cost. There's no more of a budget hawk on this committee than me, but we have to look at it as, is it worth it? Is what happened serious enough that we need to get to the bottom of it for the future of the party? If it is, then it needs to be done, and it may cost. I'm just, what comes out of this 3-person committee, I don't believe will hold any weight, and that's not to denigrate the people on the list. I was also kind of disappointed and surprised that so many people were taken off the list. I didn't realize at the time that our choices would be limited as they were. But for those reasons, and I know it's a hard choice, and I know it's financially not what some people want to do. I understand the concerns, but if we truly want it to be independent, it needs to be independent. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Next is Ms. Hogarth. And after her will be Ms. Harlos and Mr. Phillips.
Mr. Ferreira just said that he dropped and may not be able to return, but I would like us to proceed to a vote.
Okay, are you calling the question then?
Yes.
Okay. That's a call. Ms. Hogarth has called the question. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, yep.
Second by Mr. Bowen. All right. Then we are moving to a vote. I'm going to just assume there's going to be objection. We're going to lose our secretary soon. So let's go ahead and call the roll. And the motion is to, from a general sense,
please.
No problem. From a general sense, this motion, voting in favor, would switch the committee from being what we had
Mr.
decided.
Chair?
Yes.
We have to vote on
Point
closing.
of order.
Oh, God. I'm sorry. Yep. We're calling the question. We're ending debate first. Sorry. Yep. We're just ending debate.
Maybe.
There were a number of people in the queue, though, so I'm going to assume that was not going to pass either.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm lost.
Roll call on ending debate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I have someone who's getting my luggage. That's what. Ms. Bilyeu.
No.
Mr. Bowen.
Yes.
Ms. Epke,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan.
Abstain.
I'm going to vote no. Mr. Hewitt,
Abstain.
Ms. Hogarth,
Yes.
Mr. Longstreth,
Abstain.
Mr. Nana,
Yes to end debate.
Mr. Nikela,
No.
Mr. Phillips,
No.
Mr. Radsep,
Yes.
Ms. Sarwark,
No.
Mr. Smith, Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Lucchini, Mr. Lucchini, Mr. Lucchini.
I believe Lucchini has dropped.
Okay. Mr. Chair, it's 6 yes, 5 no, 3 express abstentions.
Okay, I will not vote. So I believe, if I'm correct, Ms. Harless, that makes it 6 in favor of ending debate, 5 against, and 4 abstentions.
Yes, sir.
Okay, then the debate on the item is closed.
No, it's 2/3 vote.
Mr. Chair,
Oh,
requires a
God.
2/3 vote.
Okay. All right, then it's still open. Sorry. Okay. So in the queue, where were we? We had just heard
Mr.
from, yes.
I was in the queue, but when you said we were ending debate, I took my hand down and put it back up. I don't know where that puts me.
So I do have the order here. We had Bowen, then Hogarth, and so next would have been Harlos, then Phillips, then Valente, then Adams.
I should be in there.
Mr. Harris, can you help me figure out where Miss Billieu is in the list?
After Adams.
After Adams. Perfect. Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
when I made the motion to end debate, the call to end debate, I didn't purposely speak to my sentiments because I hate it when people do that. Here's my opinion, and now I move to close debate. So with indulgence, may I make my point now?
No, that's out of order.
Thank you, Ms. Secretary, for making the ruling.
Miss Hogarth, if you're amenable, I will put you
can put
right
me in
after
the
Miss
queue.
Billieu.
Sure.
Okay, I'll put you right after Miss Billieu. Thank you. All right, Miss Harlos.
People had asked, why is this our responsibility? I think that should be patently obvious. An action of this body caused, or at least part, caused this. We've lost a lot of members over it. I mean, members of this body. I'm not talking about members, 3 of our members. That's quite a bit out of a committee of 17. I don't really think the healing has necessarily begun. There's a lot of affiliates that are just really, really concerned. And we need to have answers on this because this is actual corruption. And we've got to root this out and figure out what institutional weaknesses may have caused this. There will never be healing until we know. And if we end up not knowing, at least we can say we tried. Otherwise, it looks like we don't really care. And I'm not going to name names, but people, getting very upset about bias. One of the nominees has accused me of a crime. I mean, how much more bias can you get when you have personal things like that? So no, and I'm sure there are other nominees that have something against there's other poison pills in here. This isn't going to work with this committee as it is. And I did raise these objections in the private list and nobody really addressed them. So I don't have any confidence. We need to have an outside investigator. It's going to cost us what it's going to cost us because we screwed it up and we need to make it right. And I'm going to try to get on the phone, Mr. Chair, because my ride is here.
Understood. Ms. Harlos, are you able to continue on as secretary, or do we need to appoint a new secretary for this meeting?
Well, I'm going to try to stay on the phone to vote until I can get set up in the car. So for that 10 minutes, if someone could take over as secretary just for voting and things like that, but I will be able to resume once I'm in the car.
Okay. I noted earlier, someone noted earlier that Ms. Mattson is on the call. Is there any objection to letting Ms. Mattson take minutes in the meantime?
Can I object?
Yes, you can object, Ms. Mattson.
No,
Yeah.
I can do it. I wasn't prepared, but I did go grab enough information to step in if you need me.
Okay. Is the body okay with that?
Nobody better object.
So, all right. Then we will continue on. Next in the queue, I have Phillips, Valente, Adams, Bilyeu, Hogarth, in that order. Mr. Phillips.
Okay, I have a couple of things. First, to address Mrs. Hogarth's earlier objection, I have to admit to being one of the people that, in discussion with Mr. Buffman, brought up the possibility of just letting it go. I didn't make a conclusion one way or the other, but it has been brought up. Second, I have to object to the accusation of corruption by the secretary. That has not been proved. And so making that statement is not factually correct. And so I don't think that should be our position at this time. Now, on the subject at hand, this motion, while well-intentioned, and I don't disagree with the intentions at all, is ill-formed. We don't have a budget. We don't have many things that would be required to hire an investigative outside agency. We don't have who's going to do the hiring. We don't have a hiring process. We don't have, are we going to submit bids, which could actually increase the amount of time that this is going to take? We don't have a scope, as has been previously brought up. There are many things that are a problem with this motion. If we want to make a motion, perhaps, in the future, we take we elect the committee, and then we let them come to us with a recommendation, or let them take bids or whatever. But the current method, while I'm supportive of the intent, the current motion is not adequately formed to allow us to continue. As such, we have to vote no, and we have to allow the current form to stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. I think Mr. Rodsep has dropped. I know he had something to do as well at 3 o'clock. I don't know if someone has his phone number and could text him to let him know he can join just by phone if he's able to do that. I don't know if he knows that's an option, but I wanted to make sure that, okay. Just want to make sure he knew that was an option. Mr. Valente.
Well, Mr. Phillips really knocked it out of the park with a lot of the points that I wanted to make. This, while I understand the intent of this motion, it is ill-formed at this point, and without a scope, schedule, and a budget on this thing, this will sink us financially. Even if we think this is going to be a limited investigation. Also, some of the other points that people were bringing up that, it is investigated in that it's not attached to the LNC, but there's always the chance that we get somebody on that investigative committee that wishes ill on the Libertarian Party. So we can't always be 100% sure that the investigation itself could be compromised by having someone outside the party with not having the party's best interest at heart, harming the party by issuing or releasing internal communications to outside sources or things along those lines. So I mean, these are things that we have to consider. And I also think that by going this route, we're actually extending the time that way until we get to the point where we can actually investigate what's going on here. If we allow the process as it is now, we'll have we'll be able to begin the investigation much sooner than going through the process of hiring an independent investigator to do this. So at this point, the way that this is written, I urge members of this committee to vote no on this. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Valente. Ms. Adams.
Yeah, so I can see merits to going either direction. Absolutely. I do agree with many others that if we had initially gone with an outside investigatory body, we would already be into this investigation. There would likely be less bias involved. Certainly that is true. At this point, my questions are, who establishes which investigatory body we're going to use? Are we going to hire a private investigator? Are we going to hire a firm? What is the bidding process for that? Who's going to hire the bidding process for that? Which budget line that does the money come from? Does that mean we need?
Ms. Adams, are you there? Ms. Adams, I think your phone cut out. Ms. Adams?
We are taking steps to start an investigation.
Ms. Adams, we missed part of what you were saying. Your phone glitched out on you there, your connection.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
We can, yes.
I don't know that either of these solutions is going to be perfect at this point. We've waited to deal with this instead of moving quickly. We've already tainted our own pool. We're making accusations publicly where we don't have facts. We've already screwed with this. And at this point, moving forward with the committee, I think it's our best chance for gaining resolution quickly.
All right, thank you, Ms. Adams. Ms. Billiou.
Yeah, obviously everything everybody has already said with regard to the flaws in this motion, I would echo, but specifically, everybody keeps talking about how we need to hurry up and get this done, yet there's nothing at all in the motion that gives the timeline for the investigators to perform their duties. There's nothing that says when they're going to deliver us a report or when they're going to bring answers to us. And again, there's nothing that gives them authority to compel any of the people involved to participate in this investigation. So they could be sitting around waiting for days to get feedback from people or to set up appointments with people. So that's another flaw in this motion, is that there's nothing in here that tells us how long this is going to take or how long we expect it to take. So it still could take months. It's still indefinite, and it still is not providing people the answers they need right now. So that's all.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Billiou. Ms. Hogarth.
In addition to the concerns about scope, oversight, length of time, expense, I believe that we have provisions against unfunded mandates. And I think that we are considering one right now, not only an unfunded mandate, but an open-ended unfunded mandate with no budget being proposed. I'm just like astounded that this is even a thing that we're considering.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hogarth. I have Mr. Nana and then Mr. Nikela. Mr. Nana, you spoke to this motion at the very beginning. If you don't mind, I would like to let Mr. Nikela go first, and then we'll come back to you. If that's all right.
That's fine.
Okay, Mr. Nikela.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Nana. Ross has said, there's so many questions here that are very open-ended. For instance, who's going to be working with these companies to find out who the company is? You almost need to create a committee to go out and work with an agency, and then it would have to be brought to the board at that point to commit to a budget, and then who would be working with them to explain the bylaws, to explain how things work internally. We have party members. See, the LNC isn't investigating itself. We have party members that are not LNC members that we get to vote based on neutrality. And I think that that's important. We are putting it into the hands of others. There's just too many questions. I understand, but action works 100% of the time, all the time. We have 3 people that we've already voted for. We don't know who they are yet, but they're ready to go. I suggest we put them to work. We get it going. And if they do their work well, it should be unemotional. It should be in the same way a mineralogist looks at a rock, just very objective and fact-based. Once we get that information, we can make our own determinations, but we need what I believe the scope is very neutral in the original motion. And once we have that information, it should not be colored by personal biases or opinions. So I think as long as that is kept true and we get the right people in, which I believe we will, then we'll have what we're looking for and we can move on.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Nikela. Let's see here. I have, looks like second round people coming up. Mr. Nana, go ahead. You're
I guess I'm a bit confused by all the concerns brought up because my motion changes absolutely nothing about those concerns. I'm simply changing it to an outside committee. if the concerns of scheduling, when do they come report back to us? Those concerns are still valid if we don't pass this. It's the same fucking, I'm sorry, excuse my decorum. It's the same freaking motion. There's nothing, I'm not changing anything about whether or not they can implore us to give them evidence. They still can't be implored to give evidence the way it's written right now. So I'm really confused as to how any of these concerns are valid to my amendment, other than the price, which as actually I will concede is a valid concern, is whether or not we want to set a limit on what we spend on this. Otherwise, I frankly don't understand how any of the rest of it is germane, because it's we already passed the motion with no schedule for reporting, with no way to force them to give us, no way to force them for us to be given information like that. I mean, I don't know. I guess I just don't understand the objections, since we already passed a motion with those same objections last meeting.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Nana. Mr. Valente, do you have your hand up again? If not,
I put it down and I raised it back as an artifact, and then I've raised it again, but I'm at the back of the list.
okay. Because I had
Mr.
Valente,
Chair?
then Billiou. Yes,
I'm just letting you know I'm on the phone. If you could put me on the queue.
will do. So I've got Valente, Billiou, and Harlos.
I'm at the end of the list.
Oh, you're at the end of, okay, sorry. All right, then Billiou, Harlos.
Yeah, I just want to say, in the interest of time and expediency, we are in the middle of selecting a committee for this. That's what we already agreed to do. They're ready to get to work, whoever they wind up being. And we could wind up possibly with the same exact answers that we would get from a committee or from an organization or an entity that we're paying for, and we don't yet even know how much that's going to cost. So I guess I don't understand why we're not just going ahead with the thing that we said we were going to do and get through that, possibly get some answers, and instead of continuing to drag this out with more questions than answers.
Thank you, Ms. Billiou. Ms. Harlos?
Yes, Mr. Nana addressed almost everything. Like, all of these concerns already exist. We could easily amend this to add a budget if we wanted to. But I guess I have to say that I'm just a little, I don't know, taken aback perhaps that just even one obvious conflict of interest that I raised didn't raise any eyebrows. So I don't know. I think nothing is perfect, and people harming the party. We've got people in the party sometimes that harm the party, unfortunately. These investigative agencies are bonded, insured. I mean, people entrust them with a lot of different things. And I'm not going to repeat. Those are the things that I didn't address so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harlos. Mr. Valente?
Yeah, I mean, we do have the issues, and I think part of the reason why we brought this back to the body is that there were issues with the original motion. But now we're adding another layer of that didn't exist with this current as constructed with a budget, and it's an unlimited budget right now. So we're going to have to come back. If we pass this, we're going to have to come back and set a budget, and we have no idea how much this is going to cost. We don't have any firm idea of where this is going to go, how long this is going to take. We're going to have to set up the rubric for hiring a. Can you please put it on mute, Karen? If you can put, if you can, we're going to have to put this stuff on.
Hold on a second. Mr. Harris, can you help?
There we go. All right. Okay. These are concerns that if we bake this into, putting a professional organization into this now without any scope, schedule, and a budget, that we are going to blow out our budget just because these things without a scope can go on indefinitely and continue. It's billable hours. We're going to continue to funnel money into this investigation that may, in the end, as we've heard, could result in nothing. Could result in, there may be a few changes that we need to make, but I think there are changes that we need to make already, and that we don't need a outside investigative community to tell us that. There are definitely lapses that we need to fix now, and not wait for some outside investigative company to tell us what we need to do, because we already know we need to. So again, I urge a rejection of this as written. If we can come back with, a scope, a schedule, and a budget along with it, then perhaps I'll reconsider. But as written, I cannot. I urge everyone who has a vote to reject this.
All right. I'm being informed that that's the end of the speaker list. Is there anyone else that has been missed? We're ready to move to a vote on this item. And just to make sure I haven't gotten lost, we are just voting on the motion to amend a previous action. And this is just a majority vote. And this is the main motion. There's been no amendments. And this is where we are. Ms. Billiou?
If we, well, I just want to clarify exactly what we're voting on. And if we don't approve this, which it appears to just be an amendment of something we've already adopted, if we don't approve this, do we revert back to the original one, or is the whole thing gone?
It would revert back to the original.
Okay.
And I asked the secretary not to close the ballots until we made a decision on this, because I didn't want it to jaundice our decision. The point being that if this fails, then we're going to be back, and assuming there's no further action, then I'm going to ask the secretary to close the ballots, and we're going to have a committee. I don't know if she can do it while she's on the road, but I'm going to ask her to close the ballots. If you haven't voted yet, by the way, you should do that right now. But that's where we're at. Mr. Brown, am I correct in that? I saw you nodding before. Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
All right. So, yeah, we're just voting on this. I suspect that this is going to be controversial. I'm going to try, but I don't think it's going to work. I'm really just stalling a minute to let whoever's going to try to tally this get a ballot ready. But is there objection to the motion to amend the previous action?
Oh, so you got a question later.
Yes.
I
Okay.
figured there would be. Yes. All right. So, Ms. Harlos, are you in a place where you can do roll, or do we need Ms. Mattson, or how would you like to work this?
I am not, my connection's unstable, and I would like to just say my yes vote up front. But if Ms. Mattson would be so kind, I'd be appreciative.
I can do
Okay.
it.
Awesome. And Ms. Mattson, do you actually have the list of members of the committee?
I went and grabbed them off the website real quick. So it's a different order, but it's going to go officers at large, regions, and then back to the chair.
Okay. And just so you know, the website may not have been updated for Regions 1 and Regions 8. Mr. Lucchini is now the main person voting in 1, and Mr. Bowen is the main person voting in 8.
Thank you. It looks like the website is updated.
Oh, good. Perfect. All right. So Ms. Mattson, please call the roll.
Okay, so I have a yes from Ms. Carlos. Mr. Hagan,
No.
Ms. Ebke,
No.
Ms. Sarwark,
No.
Mr. Smith, Joshua Smith. We can come back. Mr. Longstreth,
No.
Mr. Roudsepp.
I believe he is left.
Okay. Mr. Lucchini,
No.
Mr. Nikela,
No.
Mr. Nana,
Yes.
Mr. Hewitt,
No.
Ms. Hogarth,
No.
Mr. Phillips,
No.
Ms. Billiou,
No.
Mr. Bowen,
Yes.
and we can come back to Mr. Smith. Is he available now?
Yes.
All right, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4 yeses. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 no's, 4 to 10. Would the chair like to vote?
I will not vote.
Okay, so I have 4 to 10 with 1 abstention.
All right. So by a vote of 4 to 10 with 1 abstention, the motion to amend the previous action fails. In that case, then we are continuing forward unless someone wants to
I have a motion
fill
to
in the
adjourn.
item.
I'm
Okay.
moving we adjourn immediately.
Mr.
Okay.
Chair,
Yes, Ms. Harlow.
Mr. Chair,
I'm sorry, I'm leaving the meeting. My connection's very
That's-
unstable. Thank you, Ms. Metzen.
Thank you. All right. There's been a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion to adjourn and a second. Is there objection to adjourning?
Yes.
There is objection to adjourning. Then we will take a roll on this. Ms. Metzen, you get to do this all over again right away.
All right.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, point of information before we go to the vote. What is remaining on the agenda?
The items that were left on the agenda were vacancies on LNC subcommittees, the chair's advisory committees, and public comment.
Can I, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm a little unclear exactly where we are. Can we move? Is there a motion on the floor, or can I move to just go directly to public comment?
There is a motion on the floor that has been seconded to adjourn.
Right.
So that is where we are at this moment. And Ms. Metzen is preparing a ballot.
I'm ready whenever you are.
All right, let's call the roll.
Okay, so I believe Ms. Harlos has departed, so I'm skipping her. Mr. Hagan,
No.
Ms. Ebke,
No.
Ms. Sarwark,
No.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Longstreth,
Abstain.
Mr. Roudsepp.
He's gone.
Departed.
Gone.
Oh, that's right. He was gone on the last one. Mr. Lucchini, Mr. Lucchini. All right, we'll pass him for now. Mr. Nikela. I couldn't hear. Please repeat. Is anybody else able to hear him?
No.
I think he's trying, but.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm gonna.
We didn't hear you, Phil.
Yeah,
We heard it.
That's right. So-
Abstain. I'm in a bad
Okay.
area.
Okay, got it. Abstention. Okay, Mr. Nana,
Yes.
Mr. Hewitt,
Yes, and I'll be leaving regardless. Bye.
okay, Ms. Hogarth.
No.
Mr. Phillips,
Abstain.
Ms. Billiard,
To adjourn, yes.
Mr. Bowen.
Yes.
Okay, I heard a yes from Mr. Bowen, and there's some other noise. If people are trying to get my attention, I didn't catch it. Okay, so we're back to the pass. We didn't hear from Mr. Lucchini.
Miss Matson, it's Nikayla. I'd like to change my vote to a yes. We have board members leaving, so
Okay,
I'll vote yes.
This is
Okay.
Longstreth. I'd like to do the same.
okay. I'm changing Nikayla and Longstreth from abstain to yes, and is Mr. Lucchini able to vote? I don't hear anything. So at this point, would the chair like to vote, or is he abstaining?
I'm abstaining.
All right, so my count is, and since we had some changes, I'll just read them off to make very sure. I have yeses from Smith, Longstreth, Nikayla, Nana, Hewitt, Billieu, Bowen, which is 7. I have noes from Hagan, Ebke, Sarwark, Hogarth, which is 4, and I have 2 express abstentions from Phillips and Moltmann.
That is my count as well. So, with a vote of 7 to 4 to 2, if I'm not mistaken, that just takes a majority, and that means that the motion passes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms.
with
Hogarth?
indulgence, I would ask if Mr. Tyler can be imposed upon a little longer, that we stay open for public comment for board members who have the time to stay.
I was actually going to make that proposal
Thank you,
as
sir.
well. Yeah, so we are officially adjourned, but for those that wish to be here for public comment and stuck with us this entire meeting, I would feel horrible if we didn't give you that opportunity. So board members that have other things to do, you are welcome, obviously, to leave. We are adjourned. But those who want to do public comment, I think we have put on the agenda 1 minute each and up to 30 minutes. I don't know if there's even 30 people still watching, but on the actual live connection.
Yeah,
Well,
no
there
one
are.
has their hand
Yeah.
up. That's not a board member.
If you wouldn't mind, if you would like to speak, go ahead and start putting your hands up, and we'll grab you in queue, and we'll knock that all out. We will hear from you, but we are officially adjourned, just so that's clear.
And
in
I am
fact,
happy
actually,
to remain to help facilitate the public comment. Mr. Chair, would you clarify whether you also would like me to keep the live stream live as well? My inclination is to do so.
I was actually just going to say that. I mean, officially, our business is over. What was your inclination on this, Tyler?
Is to do so, to keep it live,
leave it open?
so that those who wish to hear what our members have to say have the ability to do so. I know many are
I'm good.
watching on YouTube that have not joined us in the meeting.
Okay, I'm good with that. I'm okay with that. So, all right.
Mr.
So,
Chair, request, and I'm sure this is happening, that the recording stay open as well.
Yes, I believe.
Yes.
Usually the order of operations is the recording starts, then the live stream starts, and then the live stream shuts down, and then the recording shuts down. It's usually the order.
That is correct.
So, okay. So I am seeing in the queue, first is Chuck Moulton, followed by Omar Requero.
Mr. Chair, can I
yes?
mention one? This is Mr. Brown. It's up to you whether you want to continue the recording, but the actual meeting is over.
Right.
And so I think it's optional whether you record the comments at this point. That's strictly up to you folks.
Agreed. And Mr. Brown, thank you again for your services on all this. You're obviously welcome to hang out if you'd like to listen to public comment, but there should be no more parliamentary questions for today. So thank you. All right. Let's see here. Mr. Moulton, you are recognized.
Yeah, I'll be very brief. I have expressed interest in in filling the chair vacancy. I emailed the Libertarian National Committee on the morning of June 24th. Check your email boxes if you haven't seen that, because I know you were deluged from email on other matters. I've made my best effort to contact LNC members by phone yesterday, because I wasn't sure whether a final decision would be made at the meeting today or at another point. But real briefly, I served 2 terms on the LNC. I've chaired LNC meetings because I was vice chair and I subbed in for the chair when he was absent. I've chaired 2 state affiliates, and I'm a licensed attorney. I have a PhD in economics. I think I'm a good fit for the job, and I hope to have your consideration. And please contact me by email or phone if you have any questions. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Moulton. Next is Omar Requero.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair and everybody for your time. It's I know it's been difficult for everybody. The mailing list has been quite a show to keep up with. I thank you all for the deliberations that you guys had today. I was going to say earlier on that I found that the thing that was presented by the chair, by the acting chair, was incorrect. And so I think you all took the right action, even though it was a weird way to get there by my reading of the bylaws. And I'm just one member of the bylaws committee, and I'm just one member of the party. By my reading of the bylaws, we didn't need to go to runner. It was pretty clear that the vice chair is acting chair, and that the office of the chair is currently vacant. So that's where we're at right now. So I'm thankful to you guys to make that happen. And of course, the bylaws committee is going to revisit this. It's going to take 1 line of text in the bylaws to correct this, because we have to be so succinct in everything. But it will reflect something that says the office of chair, vice chair, secretary, and treasurer should become vacant, or whatever the case may be. Other than that, the investigative committee, you could go either way with that. But again, this is just I guess I just want to leave it with a positive note that, you know, the enemy is the state and not each other. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Requero. We disagree on the ruling, but we agree on that final sentence for sure. And next I have Matt Kirby, and then I think that's all that I have in my screen.
And Ken, I'm sorry, real quick. My interpretation of the rules is not a reflection on you. You know I love you.
No, likewise,
we all
man. Yeah,
we all do.
Yeah. We're libertarians. If we don't fight, then what are we doing? So, all right, Matt Kirby, you are recognized.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. First of all, I guess I just want to say disappointed that we're not going independent route. It seems, I mean, we don't know if anybody, I'm not accusing anybody on the LNC of being culpable here, but if they were, I mean, they're the ones that are voting whether or not there's going to be an independent investigation. And really, it's like we just need somebody to look into these communications and emails. At the very least, there's question about whether JBH was involved. And I would like to see the scope of the investigation expanded to see if there was collusion to retaliate against the secretary by members of the LNC. The timing, everybody says it's, you know, she has a long history of behavior issues. Well, why didn't you address it way back then? Is my question. Why is it when she blows the whistle, that's when you want to handle that? I think it's ridiculous, and I really hope that they think about the optics from the members, because having you know, general body members doing the investigation, we already know that people think that New Hampshire shouldn't have got their data back. They tried to justify that, so we have a right to question their judgment if they thought that there was even a chance that they shouldn't get it back. So I don't know. I think that there's too much bias involved, but I'm disappointed. What's done is done. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. That is the last hand that we have up in the queue right now. If anybody else wants to jump in, now is the time.
I thank all the members for their feedback.
Absolutely.
And for sitting through this 3.5 hour meeting.
Yeah, the one thing I would like to note real fast, and I should have done this at the very beginning, and I meant to, and then I got distracted. We lost John McAfee and Mike Gravel this week, who both sought our nomination. And, you know, I knew and got to meet both men. I liked them both. And for different reasons, you know, different people, you have relationship with different people for different reasons. And John McAfee was definitely a guy who lit that, you know, no holds barred, do what I want, you know, crazy genius inside. And Mike Gravel for his very consistent, principled stands. Those that don't know some of the things Mike Gravel did, he sought our nomination in 2008. Should check his record out. He did some good things that libertarians would applaud as well. So, you know,
Mr. Chair, we also lost 2 other activists.
Oh, really? I'm not aware of this. Go ahead, Ms. Adams.
Yeah, John Hurley, a Good Samaritan, murdered by police during his rendering of aid to citizens. Yeah, this has been a rough 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And let me say something. We have to keep Janice in our hearts.
Yeah.
Janice is good people, y'all.
Yeah. So I on that note, I thank you all for coming, and remember that though we fight, we are still family, and we lost some family members this week.
Ken,
so
Mr. Thrasher is in the queue.
Who is in the queue?
Christopher Thrasher.
Oh, Chris Thrasher. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Thrasher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did raise my hand very late there. I just wanted to say, as someone who, of course, was brought into the party with Mike Gravel and had the pleasure of working with John McAfee, it's been a weird week, certainly. And both those individuals should certainly be remembered for their contributions not only to the party in their own ways, but also to the conversation of freedom that continues. And hopefully, in the memory of each of those individuals, we can continue to amplify it because it is so desperately needed. I also just wanted to thank the committee. I know you probably all don't get this a lot, but thank each and every one of you for the time you take out of your day to make this happen. I know there's, especially when there's controversy, it's not easy, but in case nobody else says it to you, Mr. Chair, and to the rest of the committee, thank you all for everything you do. With that, I'll leave you. Cheers.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think Rufus Craig may be in the gallery and wants to speak. I'm not sure if he's by phone or what, but he's trying to figure out how to get recognized.
See if I can find him here.
While you're looking, the 22nd was also the anniversary of Mark Feldman's death.
Yeah. Apparently this is a bad week just generally for libertarians. Like, stay home, stay in bed. I don't know. It's wild. Let me see here. I am not seeing Mr. Craig.
I think he's just watching on YouTube and was just asking how to get it.
That is fine. Well, and you know, I know he's one of the nominees for the committee. We don't have the results of that yet. I assume that when Ms. Harlos gets to her destination, she will shut that ballot down, and then we'll have the results immediately after. I really felt it was important not to have that ballot closed and jaundice the results of that vote that we had today. So, because that's, yeah. But, has anybody else got their hand up? Are we good? Everybody happy? Or happier? Maybe not happy? Maybe? I apologize that my meetings aren't as tidy as other people's, but I tend to let the committee just run wild and figure their stuff out. That's my way.
And real quick, this is Omar.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to, my thoughts are so scrambled. The meeting date, can we please get that resolved? Because I know people that have actually booked for Reno, and now I've had to inform them, hey, Reno's off the table. So
yeah,
and they don't follow the LNC like I do. You get what I'm saying?
Right. No, and I agree with that. And yeah, I found that out. Was that Monday or Tuesday? And I sent something to the list about it. The hotel's completely booked through October. Every single weekend is gone. They couldn't even. Robert tried to get them to give us just some rooms. Like, can we just have enough rooms for just the core LNC, one staff member, and a meeting room? No, not because it's all the stuff from 2020 that's been pushed off to 2021. So they're all stacked up.
Everybody's making up for lost time.
Yeah, which by the way is what we need to be doing too.
Yeah. While we're all here, I just want to make my plug again for like the 300th time that we come to Region 3, since we promised we would visit all the regions if possible. And now that's back on the table, that we could actually still visit Boston and Region 3, which is Region 3 and Region 8, which are the two regions that we have been away from the longest as a committee. I think 2014 is the last time we were in Ohio, and that was for the national convention. So,
well, since we're not in a meeting, I can give my personal bias here. I mean, we've never ever met in Kentucky, ever, in 50 years.
Yeah, my suggestion would actually be either Covington, Cincinnati area, or Louisville. That way we can get the Kentucky people in there / the Indiana people.
When's the last time we were in Michigan, Dustin?
It's been a long time since that too. I can't even recall. I mean, honestly, it's probably been decades. I don't think we've been in Michigan in, I don't know. It's definitely since before I joined the party.
Yeah.
So then here's my push for Michigan. Michigan in September, as somebody who grew up there, is absolutely freaking beautiful. And the opportunity for fundraising based on Color Tour would be through the roof.
Yeah, anything in Region 3 is going to get my support. Anything outside of Region 3, I'm flatly voting against this time. I'm honestly sick of it because I'm tired of Region 3 being the short end of the stick constantly. When Mr. Coburn was still on the committee, we had a handshake agreement that if I supported Boston, he would try to support Region 3. He's unfortunately departed now, so it's pretty much just up to me to hammer in that we need to go to Region 3. Please.
Let's see. Yeah, well, all right. Well, if there's nothing else, I would say, Tyler, let's shut this stream down at a minimum. We can definitely stop all that, stop the recordings.